Hey everyone, welcome back to Paranormal M. Thanks for being here tonight. If you enjoy the channel, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. The first story is about a couple who found a beautiful riverside spot while camping, but the night that followed left both of them feeling watched and deeply uneasy. Anyway, get comfortable, settle in, and I hope you sleep well tonight. You know, a couple of years ago, my partner and I decided, almost on a whim, to go camping over Easter weekend. The weather had turned strangely beautiful for that time of year. Warm, bright, the kind of day that makes staying indoors feel like a mistake. So we packed up our gear, loaded the dogs into the car, and just started driving toward a national park in the mountains. We did not have a real plan, which is very human of us. Just a direction and the hope we would find a place before dark. The drive itself was stunning. We followed this narrow dirt road beside a cold little river for what felt like forever. On one side, there was this steep rock face, and on the other, the river dropped into a valley. We kept going and going, but there was nowhere to stop. I remember getting irritated because the light was slipping away, and I finally said, "We're stopping at the next turn, no matter what." So we did. We got out to stretch, let the dogs roam a bit, and right away they started pulling toward the water. We followed them down, and that was when we found it. This hidden clearing tucked beneath the riverbank, right where the water curved into a shallow bend. You could see up and down the river from there, but from the road above, no one would have known we were there. It felt secret, protected, like the place had been waiting for us. The moment I stepped into that clearing, I felt at home. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true. There was even an old stone fire ring there, half reclaimed by the earth, with a young beech tree growing through the middle of it. I carefully moved the little tree to a safer patch of ground before we made our fire. My grandfather taught me when I was small that if you enter the woods, you do it with respect. So before we ate, I poured out a little tea as an offering. It wasn't about ritual exactly. It just felt right. The afternoon was peaceful. Really peaceful. We cooked, sat by the fire, listened to the river, watched the dogs settle in. But as soon as the sun dropped, the temperature fell hard. It went from comfortable to biting cold in no time. So eventually, we put the fire out and crawled into the tent to warm up. And this is the part I still can't shake. What I remember most clearly is the darkness. I have never known darkness like that before. It was so complete, so heavy, that I genuinely could not tell whether my eyes were open or shut unless I touched my own face. It wasn't just dark, it was consuming. It made me feel very small. I barely slept. The river was there the whole time, this low, endless rush, not loud exactly, just constant, like a hum under everything. But what really kept me awake were the sounds around the tent. More than once, I heard something brush against the fabric, slowly, deliberately, like fingers trailing from the top of the tent down to the ground. First on one side, then another, then behind us. All around. I kept trying to explain it away. Maybe leaves, maybe branches, maybe insects, anything ordinary. Then I started hearing voices. They were muffled, never close enough to make out words, but definitely voices. More than one. There was laughter too, and singing, and the sound of people talking in this strangely cheerful way. That should have felt harmless, I know, but it didn't. Their happiness felt wrong somehow. Not joyful, not friendly. It felt mocking or sharp around the edges, like something pretending. That went on almost the entire night. Near dawn, it finally quieted. I must have slept for maybe an hour. When I woke up at first light, I cannot even explain the relief. It was instant. It felt like pressure lifting off my chest, off my whole body. I was so grateful it was morning again. I didn't say anything right away to my boyfriend, not because I thought he'd laugh at me, but because I had this strong feeling that I shouldn't talk about it there. Like the place itself wanted silence. The morning was calm, gentle even. We packed slowly, and just before I went to grab the last of our things, I stopped at the edge of the clearing and quietly said, "Thank you for letting us stay." The second I said it, a bird started singing right in front of us. I whistled back, half joking, and it answered. Then I did it again, and it answered again. And within minutes, more birds joined in. By the time we were carrying the last bags to the car, the trees above us were full of birdsong. And I know how that sounds. Birds sing. Forests are full of birds. I get it. But this didn't feel ordinary. It felt focused, like they had gathered for us, like they were seeing us out. What surprised me most was the emotion of it. I felt this sudden wave of sadness, almost grief. For a moment, it felt less like I was leaving the woods to go home, and more like I was leaving home behind. Once we were back on the road and the forest had thinned out behind us, both of us relaxed without even meaning to. It was like our bodies had been tense all morning and only realized it once we were gone. That was when I finally asked him how he'd felt during the night. He told me he'd heard the brushing too, and once or twice, the voices. He admitted he had felt uneasy the whole night, and that the birds in the morning had unsettled him too. I still don't know what happened there. Maybe there's an explanation for every part of it. Maybe there isn't. All I know is that the entire time we were in that clearing, I felt a presence with us. I felt watched. And even now, when I remember it, the memory itself feels strange, like it doesn't sit right in the mind. I've only told this story to 1 or 2 people, because even now it sounds strange when I say it out loud. This happened about 8 years ago, up near the northern edge of Michigan's Lower Peninsula, not far from the Pigeon River country. I was out there trying to find my dad's old hunting camp. It was way back in the woods, the kind of place you could only reach by following dirt roads and half-forgotten logging trails. It was getting close to sunset when I finally pulled over. I had no signal, no GPS, nothing useful, so I was relying on this worn paper map I'd brought with me. The forest up there is beautiful, but it can feel heavy too. The trees are so thick, and the undergrowth is dense enough that the light starts fading earlier than you expect. I was sitting in my truck, looking down at the map, trying to make sense of where I'd gone wrong. And at some point, without really realizing it, everything around me went quiet. The birds stopped. The little rustling sounds in the brush stopped too. It was one of those silences that doesn't register right away, but once it does, it feels wrong. I remember thinking I should probably head back before dark. That was when I noticed movement off to my left, maybe 20 feet away. Something was slipping through a patch of tall ferns, moving fast toward the tree line. It startled me, sure, but I didn't think much of it at first. I figured it was probably a fox, maybe a raccoon, something normal. I kept watching, expecting to catch a clear look at it before it reached the trees. But as soon as it hit the edge of the woods, the movement stopped. I stared for a bit, waiting for it to step out or shift again, but nothing happened. After a minute or so, I just looked back down at the map. Then I saw movement again. This time it was right at the tree line. I looked up, and for a second I couldn't figure out what I was seeing. I thought I was looking at another tree trunk. But slowly, and I mean very slowly, it clicked that one of those shapes wasn't a tree at all. It was standing there. It was tall, maybe just over 6 feet, dark gray in color, and covered in this short, close fur. The body was long and narrow, almost too narrow, like a stretched-out weasel standing upright. Its arms, or front legs, or whatever they were, hung down at its sides and looked oddly thin. But the head was the part that really got me. It was flat and strange, shaped almost like a snake's head. That's the only comparison that still feels right. Not broad like a bear, not narrow like a deer, just flat and reptile-like. I couldn't make out normal features either. No clear eyes, no visible mouth. Just these odd contours around where the face should have been, all covered in that same gray fur. And the whole time, I had the unmistakable feeling that it was looking straight at me. I must have stared at it for maybe 5 seconds. Then it dropped down, quick and smooth, and disappeared back into the dark woods. And here's the part that unsettles me almost as much as seeing it. For the next 10 minutes or so, I barely reacted. It was like my mind refused to process what had just happened. I started the truck, turned around, found my way back toward the highway, and only then did it all hit me at once. The silence, the shape of it, the way it moved. I remember my stomach just dropping when the reality of it finally caught up with me. I was shaken for the rest of the night. I told a friend later, but that was it. I never made a big thing out of it, mostly because I knew how it sounded. But I also never went back out there. Not once. And honestly, I don't plan to. So I still don't know what it was. I just know that something was out there in those woods, watching me from the trees. Before I get into what happened, I want to give you a little context so this makes sense. I've been practicing astral projection, or out-of-body experiences, for a little over 2 decades now, around 22 years. It's been such a big part of my life that I've learned to recognize certain energies almost instantly when I'm outside my body. One morning, I started drifting out the way I normally do, and right away, I felt that something was off. Before I could even fully see where I was, I could sense that I wasn't alone. That's one thing about being out of body, at least in my experience. You can feel the energy of a person or an entity before you ever lay eyes on them. And what I felt in that moment was heavy, unsettling, and honestly, a little sinister. When my surroundings came into focus, I saw several beings standing around me. They looked a lot like what most people would call the classic alien type. Large, dark, slanted eyes, narrow bodies, angular heads. And I'll be honest with you, they were deeply unnerving to look at. There was something cold about them, something that didn't feel natural. These beings didn't just appear once. They showed up again and again over a long stretch of time. And when I say aliens, I'm really just using that word to describe entities that resemble what people commonly report. What stood out most wasn't just how they looked, but the effect they had on me. They carried this strange, almost synthetic energy, and whenever they came close, it would leave me feeling frozen, like I'd been pinned in place. At times, it even felt like they were pulling me out of my body without my consent, even when I had no intention of leaving. I've had so many encounters with them that I could never fit all of it into one story. Over the years, I've come across different kinds of beings during my experiences, different groups, different presences. But the ones I'm talking about here were a particular group that resembled the Greys, except their skin had this pale amber-orange tone. Out of all the beings I've encountered, these were the ones I saw most often. Their energy felt denser, heavier, almost lower in frequency than some of the others I'd met. Not every encounter I've had has been frightening. Some have actually been beautiful, insightful, even life-changing. But this group felt very different from that. The main thing I've come to understand is that these entities seem to operate in the astral realm. They can be encountered in those dimensions, and sometimes it even feels like they seek people out there. especially people who regularly practice astral projection. I've often wondered whether some so-called alien abduction stories may actually be experiences happening out of body rather than in the physical world. That doesn't make them any less real. It just means they may be unfolding on a different layer of reality. At the same time, I do believe some abductions are physical. I think both kinds of experiences can exist. I talked in much more detail about this recently on my podcast, The Astral Threshold, where I shared several of these encounters, including one especially intense experience where communication happened, and these beings revealed some fascinating things about why they interact with me, and maybe with humans more broadly. That conversation stayed with me for a long time. I want to tell you about something that happened during the COVID lockdown, because even now, it still stays with me. Back then, I grew really close to a friend of mine named Adrian. He lived in another state, though he was originally from mine, and we had a lot of mutual friends. We'd seen each other at music festivals over the years and always got along, but we were never especially close outside of those moments. Still, I had always had a crush on him. Looking back, I think he flirted with me more than I realized, but at the time, I was too oblivious to really see it. Then lockdown happened, and, like a lot of people, we started talking more. What began as casual check-ins turned into long FaceTime calls, sometimes for hours. Somewhere in all of that, I fell for him. Really fell for him. He kept asking me to come visit him once travel felt possible again, and when things finally started easing up, I bought a plane ticket. Part of why I went was because I cared about him deeply. He had been through so much. His father had passed away a couple of years earlier, and it seemed like after that, something in him shifted. He became heavier somehow, darker. And during the time we were talking, more loss and personal struggles kept piling onto his life. I wanted to see him, of course, but I also genuinely wanted to make sure he was okay. When I got there, everything felt intense almost immediately. Being with him in person made all of my feelings stronger. I wasn't just infatuated anymore. I felt like I was falling in love. One night, while we were in bed together, something happened that I still have trouble explaining. In the middle of it, I opened my eyes while he was above me, and for a moment, the face I saw did not feel like his. It was like his face was still there, but something else was layered over it. The eyes didn't look like his eyes. They felt sharp, piercing, almost as if they were looking straight through me. The expression was wrong too. There was this unsettling, almost cruel smile, and the face itself didn't look like the kind of demon you usually see in Western horror movies. It reminded me more of an older, Eastern-style depiction of an entity. Ancient, strange, hard to describe, but deeply unsettling. I was terrified. I shut my eyes immediately. But at the same time, I felt completely overtaken by the moment, almost blank in my mind, like I couldn't fully process what I'd seen. It was as if my body kept going while my thoughts just disappeared. Later, I finally told him. I expected him to laugh it off or tell me I imagined it. Instead, he said something that chilled me even more. He told me it was funny because I wasn't the first person to say something like that to him. Then he joked, in that dark way he had, "Maybe I'm an incubus." That was very much his sense of humor. He was fascinated by demons and dark spiritual imagery, and he often said shocking things half as a joke, half in a way that made you wonder how much he meant them. I'm not going to try to reduce him to one kind of person, because he was complicated. He was hurting in ways I don't think most people ever fully understood. He had a gentleness in him too, and pain, and contradictions I still can't neatly explain. But not long after I came home, he betrayed my trust, and I ended things. Then, almost a year later, just days before the anniversary of the last time I had seen him, he took his own life. I don't know exactly what I saw that night. I still can't explain it in a way that feels clean or rational. Maybe I saw something spiritual. Maybe I saw the weight of his grief, his darkness, his pain, all reflected in one terrifying moment. Maybe it was something my mind translated into an image because what I was feeling was too overwhelming to name. I just know that when I opened my eyes, for one moment, the person looking back at me did not feel entirely human. And I've never forgotten it. It's been quite a while since this last happened, but the other day I was stretched out on the couch, half watching a video, when I caught something from the corner of my eye. It was this quick, soft white flash, maybe about 4 or 5 inches across. Not a sharp beam, more like a diffused patch of light. It slid a few inches along the wall, and then it was gone. What made it feel so strange is that it happened on the same wall where, a few years back, I'd seen 2 long, bright streaks of white light appear for just a moment and then vanish. That wall runs along the front side of the house, where the bedrooms are. There aren't any windows on that side, and we usually keep all the doors closed. Now, the back of the house is almost the opposite. It's mostly open living space, with the kitchen, dining area, and living room all lined with big windows. The curtains stay closed most of the time, but there's a bay window back there, so a little bit of light can still sneak in around the edges. What's odd is that there's really not much behind our house that should cause something like this. The neighborhood was built on old, flat field land, and from the back, you can barely see anything except one 2-story house off in the distance. Even that lines up more with a section where we don't really get direct light. We've been here about 6 years now, which is why this keeps nagging at me. If it were just some normal reflection, you'd think we'd see it all the time, not once in a blue moon. I've tried to think of ordinary explanations. Birds pass through sometimes, and every now and then there's a plane overhead. Back when we first moved in, I remember sitting in one of the bedrooms and watching a small spot of light slowly move across the upper part of the wall before disappearing. Something outside had to have been shifting at just the right pace to make that happen. But even then, it didn't really make sense because that room has blackout curtains, and there shouldn't have been light coming through from above like that. We used to have a bird feeder outside, and I wondered if maybe that could have been reflecting sunlight, but it's actually down right now for cleaning. That's about the only thing back there I could point to as a possible source. What really stands out is that this hasn't just happened once. Over the years, we've noticed these flashes on 2 different walls. Sometimes it's during the day, sometimes late at night. It's always incredibly brief, and it's either a bright white streak or a soft patch of diffused light. I honestly don't know what to make of it. Maybe there's a simple explanation I'm missing, but after seeing it happen in such different ways over the years, I can't help being curious. When we first moved into this house, during that first year, something happened a handful of times that I still can't explain. I'd be lying on my bed in the afternoon, half watching TV, and this bright white light would suddenly appear on the wall. Not just a little glow slipping through the curtains either. I had blackout curtains up, and the room was dim. But these lights were different. They'd show up as little round or slightly square shapes, maybe a few inches across, then drift slowly along the wall above the TV for a foot or 2, before vanishing near the bedroom door. The first time I saw it, I actually went outside to investigate because it made no sense. I stood in the backyard, trying to figure out where it could possibly be coming from. There's a 2-story house behind ours, but the angle didn't line up at all. No trees, no glass structures, nothing that should have been reflecting light into that room. Just open sky. We do live not too far from a small airport, so I considered planes, and there's also a military base nearby, so helicopters aren't unusual. But every time I noticed the light, there was no sound to go with it. No plane overhead, no helicopter, nothing. Then one afternoon, I was in the living room scrolling on my tablet when I looked up and saw two bright streaks of light on the wall. They were long and narrow, one on either side of a piece of wall decor. Each one was maybe 2 feet long and only a couple of inches wide. They stayed there for a second, sharp and white, and then disappeared. I checked the windows immediately because that wall gets the strongest sunlight in the house, but the curtains were shut. And even if they hadn't been, the shape of the light made no sense. These weren't soft, natural patches of sunlight. They were too defined, too deliberate looking. I'd mostly put it out of my mind after that. You know how something strange can happen a few times, and eventually life just carries on. But then it happened again a few nights ago, and this time my husband, Daniel, saw it too. We were sitting in the living room watching a video when this triangle of white light appeared on the wall beside the TV, between it and the clock. It looked like a right triangle, maybe 4 inches tall and 5 inches across. Just suddenly there. Bright, crisp, unmistakable. And then it was gone. I didn't even say anything at first because I was still processing it. Then I turned to Daniel and asked, "Did you see that?" He just looked at me, completely stunned, and said yes. He honestly looked a little shaken, and I don't blame him. It was fully dark outside, and the lamps were on like normal. This wasn't sunlight. It wasn't headlights. It wasn't a reflection that made any obvious sense. Our curtains have those big metal grommets, and we have cats, so they do sometimes paw them open a bit. I'm used to the patterns that creates. That kind of light is soft, faded around the edges, and you can usually trace where it's coming from. This was nothing like that. These lights are bright white, with pretty clean edges, and they don't look like beams shining in from somewhere. They just appear on the wall, move sometimes, and disappear. At this point, I'm also not even sure where a story like this belongs. Paranormal? Glitchy house mystery? Weird light phenomenon? Human beings really do love sorting the unexplainable into neat little categories, as if that helps. But honestly, I just know it happened, and I can't explain it. I want to tell you about our first dog, because even now, it still feels like he's part of this house. My wife and I brought him home when we were still early in our relationship, just figuring life out together. He was a big Rottweiler named Ronan, and from the time he was little, he attached himself to us in this fierce, all-consuming way, especially to my wife. He was stubborn, moody, suspicious of basically everyone, and honestly, kind of a jerk to anybody outside our little circle. That was on us more than him. We got him during those isolated years when it was easy to stay home, easy to keep to ourselves, and we didn't do enough to get him comfortable with the world. But with us, he was pure devotion, completely loyal. The kind of dog who made you feel safe the second he laid down near the door. I used to tell my wife, half joking and half serious, that if anyone ever tried coming through our house at night, they'd regret making it past the hallway. Then we lost him. He was only 2. It was one of those ordinary evenings, the kind you never think twice about until it becomes the before and after of your life. We took him on the same short walk we'd done 100 times before, and somehow, from heat and bad luck and heartbreak, he just didn't make it back. It was sudden and unreal. My wife was shattered. I was too. The whole house changed overnight. It felt wrong without the sound of him moving around, without that heavy presence that had become part of our lives. Not long after, we brought home another Rottweiler puppy. His name is Rudy, and he is just about the opposite of Ronan in every way. He's still protective, sure, but he's sweet, social, goofy, and convinced that every stranger is a potential best friend. We were determined not to repeat the same mistakes, So we got him out into the world early. New people, new places, new sounds, all of it. We wanted him brave and open, and somehow he became exactly that. Now, I need to tell you one more thing so this makes sense. I've dealt with sleep paralysis for years, long enough that I know the routine, long enough that I know the feeling of waking up and not really waking up. I've seen all kinds of things in those moments, but the one that comes back most often is the Hat Man. He usually stands in the corner of the room, silent, watching, sometimes smiling, sometimes just waiting. I hate him, but I've learned my ways of fighting through it. I focus on moving my toes. I try to steady my breathing. I pray. Usually, eventually, I break free. But one night, it was different. He was there in the corner like always, only this time nothing I did worked. I tried every trick I knew, and I stayed stuck. Then I watched him drop down low and start moving toward me, crawling across the room in this awful, unnatural way. And suddenly he was on top of me, close enough that I could see his face right in front of mine. His eyes looked hollow and wrong, and he had this fixed grin that made my whole body feel cold. I was terrified, truly terrified. Then, through that buzzing, humming paralysis noise, I heard something else. A growl, deep, angry, right beside my wife's side of the bed. I forced my eyes to move, just enough to look over, and there he was, and I knew. It was Ronan. Before I could even process it, he lunged, no hesitation, just pure protective instinct, the same way he'd always loved us. The second he hit that thing, I woke up, fully awake, heart pounding, eyes full of tears. I got out of bed and went straight to the closet where we still keep his favorite stuffed toy, the only one he never tore apart. I sat on the floor holding it, crying and thanking him. Thanking my difficult, loyal, protective boy for still watching over us, for still standing guard, for somehow loving us enough to come back one more time when I needed him. I don't really care how anyone explains it. I just know that, for one night at least, my old dog was still here, and he was still protecting his family. I still remember this so clearly. It was the summer of 2000, the night before my senior portraits, and honestly, it remains one of the strangest and most terrifying things I have ever lived through. I've always had these strong gut feelings about things. I used to tell myself it was just because I noticed details other people missed, nothing more than that. But this was different. That night, my mom was out of town helping care for my great aunt, who was very sick. My dad and my younger brother had spent the whole day working outside, and their allergies were awful, so they had both taken medicine and were completely knocked out. The house was quiet, and I was alone with this awful feeling building in my chest. It was around 10 that night when I called my mom. I almost didn't because it felt dramatic, but I couldn't shake it. When she answered, I told her, "Mom, I can't go to sleep. If I go to sleep right now, I'm not going to wake up." She asked me what I meant, and I tried to explain, but I couldn't really make sense of it myself. All I knew was this: if I fell asleep in my bed that night, I was going to die. That was the feeling, plain and simple. She thought I was overwhelmed, and to be fair, life had been heavy. My mom had been gone a lot because of family illness, and I was still carrying the mess of a breakup from months before. So she tried to calm me down and told me not to sleep in my room. She said, "Just lie down on the couch and get some rest there." So I did. I took my pillow and blanket and made a little bed for myself on the sofa. For a while, I felt a little better. Then maybe an hour later, I started feeling silly, like maybe I had overreacted. So I picked up my pillow and went back to my bedroom. I had barely drifted off when I woke up to this horrible sound. At first, it sounded like rushing water, and then, almost immediately, I heard the windows give way. Then I saw it. Smoke, flames, orange light everywhere. The house next door was on fire, completely engulfed, and because the homes were so close together, ours had caught too. Everything after that happened fast. I got everyone out of the house. I called for help. Firefighters and police came. At one point, I even had to ask an officer to help move my car because the heat had affected it so badly I couldn't get it out myself. And here's the part that still chills me. The only part of our house that actually caught fire was my bedroom. Later, my dad called my mom to tell her what had happened. She was hysterical and told him to put me on the phone immediately. The first thing she said was, "How did you know?" And I didn't. I still can't explain it. All I knew was that I had this overwhelming certainty that if I went into a deep sleep in that room that night, I would never wake up. My bed was right beside the windows, and after the fire, part of the ceiling had collapsed onto what was left of it. To this day, my mom says that was one of the eeriest phone calls she has ever gotten from me. And honestly, I understand why. I can't explain what warned me. I just know something did. We all made it out safely, and in the end, the damage was repaired. But I have never forgotten that feeling, and I have never ignored my instincts since. So this happened on the night of February 11th, 2024. It was sometime around 9:45 p.m., and I was at home with my parents, just having a normal evening. The three of us were sitting together on the couch, watching a random series on Netflix. Nothing felt unusual at first. It was just one of those quiet family moments you don't think twice about. At one point, my mom got up and went to the bathroom. She could still hear the TV from there, so she wasn't completely disconnected from what we were watching. While she was away, there was a scene where some people were getting into a helicopter and fastening their seatbelts. Right around then, as my mom was coming back into the room, my dad made a comment about the helicopter. I don't remember his exact words, but it was something close to, "I don't even know why they bother buckling up in that thing." It was the kind of casual remark he'd make without thinking much about it. Then the camera angle on the show changed and focused on the front of the helicopter. The second I saw it, I started thinking about what model it might be. For some reason, the thought that came to mind was Robinson. I was just about to say something out loud, probably to check with my dad if that was the type of helicopter we were looking at. But before I could speak, I noticed my mom had stopped walking. She was just standing there in the dark, looking directly at me. It threw me off immediately. I remember thinking, why is she staring at me like that? It was so strange that it completely interrupted my train of thought, and I never ended up saying what I had been about to say. Then she explained what had just happened from her side. She said that when my dad made that comment about the seatbelts, she suddenly had a feeling of déjà vu. In that moment, she became convinced she knew exactly what was going to happen next. She said she expected me to say something like, "This is a Robinson helicopter, isn't it?" And that was the part that shocked me, because I had not said anything at all. I hadn't even hinted at it. I had only thought it. And my mom is not into aviation. She doesn't know helicopter models. There is just no normal reason she would guess that specific thought at that exact moment before I said a word. What makes it even stranger to me is that her reaction may have changed what happened. Because she was so certain about what I was about to say, she paused and stared at me, waiting for me to say it. And that very act distracted me enough to stop the thought from becoming words. It felt like the moment was somehow interrupted by being noticed. That's why the whole thing stayed with me so strongly. I know how unbelievable it sounds when you say it out loud. But from where I was sitting, it genuinely felt like my mother had seen a few seconds into the future, or somehow picked up on a thought that had not yet been spoken. To me, it did not feel random. It felt precise. The closest comparison I can think of is the idea that observation changes an outcome. That's why my mind went to the double slit experiment and questions about consciousness, perception, and whether the brain is doing things we still don't understand. Maybe moments like this point to something deeper about how human awareness works. Maybe there's some connection between minds, or between thought and time, that we barely understand. I know that sounds intense, and maybe even a little ridiculous to some people, but it was real to me. Real enough that I still replay it in my head. Only my mother and I truly know how that moment felt from the inside. And honestly, that's what makes it so unforgettable. I want to tell you about something that happened a few nights ago, because honestly, I still can't make sense of it. It was my birthday week, and my boyfriend and I were just hanging out in our room late at night, doing something completely normal. He was sitting on the bed playing Xbox, and I was right beside him at my desk on my PC. We'd been gaming for maybe an hour. Nothing unusual, nothing creepy, just a quiet night at home. When we got off, we both took off our headphones. He looked at me and asked, really casually, if I wanted to go have a smoke. I said yes, then moved over to sit with him on the bed. A few seconds later, maybe 10 or so, the whole room was completely still. No TV noise, no one outside, no phones going off, nothing. And then we both heard it. A woman's voice. It sounded almost exactly like mine, but not fully. Close enough to make my stomach drop. Clear as day, right there in the room, it said, "Can we go have a bowl?" Not the same sentence my boyfriend had said. Not an echo. Not a replay. Not one of our devices glitching out in any way that makes sense. Just a voice that sounded like me, speaking into the silence. We both froze. At first, we tried to explain it away, because that's what you do when reality suddenly stops acting right. We thought maybe a device had picked something up, maybe a weird audio relay, maybe some recording, maybe literally anything. But the more we went over it, the less any of those explanations fit. It wasn't just random noise. It was specific. It was deliberate. And it was wrong in a way I can't really describe unless you felt it yourself. The weirdest part is that the sentence it said was something I easily could have said in that exact moment, in that exact tone. That's what keeps getting to me. It felt like hearing a version of myself from half a step to the side. Like somewhere else, in some other split of reality, I was the one who said it first, and somehow we heard that version instead. My boyfriend had never really believed in paranormal things before this. Parallel timelines, spirits, glitches, any of it. But after that night, both of us were shaken to the core. And because it happened on my birthday, my mind went somewhere even more personal. I lost my best friend a few years ago, and I've spent so much time wishing for a sign from her, asking for anything at all. So part of me wondered if it could have been her. But another part of me felt something much darker than comfort. Not loving, not peaceful, just wrong. We got chills immediately and left the house. We ended up at my parents' place because neither of us wanted to stay there after that. Even hours later, I was sweating like crazy, which made no sense because I wasn't panicking anymore on the outside. But my body clearly was. That night I had one of the worst dreams I've had in years. In the dream, I woke up in our own bed at home and rushed to the foot of it. And there was this dark figure there, something inhuman, something that felt evil. Then I jolted awake at my parents' house, drenched in sweat, shaking so hard I could barely breathe. My boyfriend was asleep beside me, and I couldn't even wake him up properly for a minute. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. 2 days later, we had to fly out to visit my family across the country. I kept trying to calm myself down, telling myself whatever happened stayed in that house. that distance would help, that I was safe, and he was staring directly at me. Not scanning the room, not glancing around, looking into me. I looked away and I could still feel it. The woman too. It felt like both of them were locked onto me in a way that made my skin crawl. Then it got even stranger. My boyfriend saw the older woman, but he said he never saw the man. That part messed me up maybe more than the voice did. Because how do you notice one person standing right there, but not the other when he's the one radiating this overwhelming, frightening presence? That was the moment I started asking myself whether I was losing my grip on reality, or whether something was actually following me. The next night, I was out at dinner with my family. I got up to go to the restroom, and I already felt uneasy being alone. The hallway was dim, and I just had this stupid, heavy dread sitting on my chest. Then I heard a little psst outside the bathroom door. I thought it was my boyfriend messing with me. I really did. But it wasn't him. Since moving into our house a few months ago, I've also felt drained in a way I can't fully explain. My energy has been low, my moods have been all over the place, and I felt more vulnerable than usual. Maybe that means nothing. Maybe it means something. I honestly don't know anymore. What I do know is this. We were sober when the voice happened. We never even ended up smoking that night because we were too freaked out. We've checked the practical things too. Carbon monoxide detectors, the house itself, all of it. I wanted a logical answer. I still want one, but I don't have one. So that's what happened. I'm telling you exactly how it felt because I don't want to flatten it into some neat little story. It didn't feel neat. It felt intimate and frightening and deeply confusing. Like something brushed against our reality for 10 seconds and then disappeared again, leaving us to sit there and wonder what we heard. I still don't know whether it was a glitch, a spirit, a mimic, grief, fear, or something else entirely. I just know that both of us heard a voice that wasn't supposed to be there. And neither of us has felt quite the same since. A few years ago, I was still living with my parents, and both of our bedrooms were upstairs. My dad was on an overnight shift that night, so it was just my mom and me in the house. We spent part of the evening together like we usually did, talking and hanging out for a while, and then we headed off to our rooms for the night. Now, the way my bed was set up back then, my feet pointed toward the bedroom door, so whenever I slept, I was facing it. Sometime in the middle of the night, probably a little after 2 a.m., I woke up suddenly with this intense feeling that someone was standing near me, just watching me from the side. I turned my head, and there she was, my mom, standing right beside my bed. I could see her so clearly. She had on this pale nightgown with tiny blue flowers on it, one she wore all the time, and she was just standing there in total silence. At first, I gave this nervous little laugh because she had honestly scared me half to death. I remember blurting out something like, "Mom, seriously, what are you doing? You scared me." You have to understand, my mom and I have always been really close. We joke around a lot, and late-night chats or random snack runs weren't unusual for us. So in that sleepy, half-awake moment, it honestly made sense to me that she might be there to wake me up for something silly. But she didn't say a word. She didn't smile, didn't move, didn't react at all. So I tried again, still thinking she was about to crack and laugh. I said something like, "Come on, what is it?" Still nothing. And that's when the feeling shifted. I started to get this awful sense that something might be wrong. Maybe she was sick. Maybe something had happened and she didn't know how to tell me. I said, much more seriously, "Mom, what's going on?" I pushed myself up with my elbow and started to sit up so I could face her properly. Then I reached my hand out toward her shoulder, just trying to get some response, any response at all. And the second I did, she vanished. Not stepped back, not moved away, just gone. Completely gone. My whole body lurched forward because there was nothing there. I froze for maybe half a second, then I jumped up, turned on the light, and ran straight across the hall to my mom's room. She was in bed, fast asleep, breathing peacefully with her machine on like she'd been there the whole time. I woke her up, completely shaken, asking if she had just been in my room. She was confused, groggy, and a little irritated that I'd dragged her out of sleep, and she told me she hadn't gone anywhere. I did not sleep again for the rest of that night. And to this day, I can still picture it perfectly. The nightgown, the silence, the way she looked standing there beside me. I still can't explain it, but I know what I saw. You know, I still can't pin down exactly when this happened. Maybe 2 or 3 winters ago. I don't remember the month, only the cold. That kind of cold that gets into your bones and makes the whole world feel empty. I grew up in a little coastal town, and our house sat way out on the edge of it, almost swallowed up by trees. The nearest neighbor was far enough away that, at night, it felt like we were the only people left in the world. Behind the house, there was this narrow walking trail that wound through the woods and opened out into these wide, frost-covered fields. I used to walk my dog there every evening. His name was Polaris. He was a huge white German shepherd, absolutely massive, the kind of dog that made strangers stop and stare. I'm a pretty big guy myself, but when he stood up, he could nearly put his paws on my shoulders. With him around, I never really felt nervous out there, even after dark. One night, though, something changed. It started off like any other walk. Quiet, normal. Just the sound of our footsteps and the wind moving through the trees. But on the way back, I checked my phone and saw I was down to maybe 4% battery. It was completely dark by then, the kind of dark where your eyes never really adjust. If it hadn't been for the glow from Polaris's collar, I wouldn't have been able to see him at all. So I switched on my flashlight, knowing full well the battery probably wouldn't survive the rest of the walk. Still, I knew the trail well enough, and home was only about 15 minutes away, so I didn't panic. Then Polaris suddenly lunged. I mean really lunged. Hard enough that the leash yanked through my hand and almost pulled me sideways. He started barking like I'd never heard before, deep and frantic, aimed straight into the trees to our left. I tried to calm him down, but he was locked onto something. Just staring into the woods, teeth bared, growling between barks. And then, I heard it too. At first it was just movement in the brush. Heavy movement. Not the quick rustle of a rabbit or fox, and not the light scampering of something small. This was slower, deliberate. Like something big was circling just out of sight. I remember trying to tell myself it was probably a deer. Something ordinary. Something explainable. People do that, don't they? We hand ourselves little lies so we can keep moving. Then came the sound. I don't know how to describe it in a way that really does it justice. It was a howl, I guess, but wrong in every possible way. Too deep, too strained, too human in some parts and too animal in others. It came from maybe 30 yards away, maybe less, and it made every hair on my body stand up. It didn't sound natural. It sounded sick, twisted, like something trying to imitate a living creature and not getting it quite right. That was enough for me. I ran. Polaris ran with me, thank God, and we tore down that trail as fast as we could. I could hear something behind us then. Footsteps, fast and uneven, crashing through the brush and then onto the trail itself. For a second, I honestly thought it had to be a person, maybe some lunatic trying to scare us. My phone was down to 1%. I knew that if I turned around and used the flashlight, that was it. Last bit of battery gone. But I did it anyway. I swung the light behind me, and for maybe a second or two, I saw it. I wish I hadn't. In the face. That's the part I can't get past. Its face looked almost exactly like my dog's. Not perfectly, not enough to mistake it for him, but enough that my brain locked up when I saw it. Same shape, same muzzle, same pale fur around the head. It was like someone had taken the familiar face of something I loved and twisted it into something rotten. The flashlight died right after that. I don't even remember the rest of the run very clearly. I just know I made it home. I slammed the door, locked everything, and sat there on the floor with Polaris beside me, both of us breathing like we'd been underwater. We were safe. At least, I think we were. But I didn't sleep that night. Not even close. And the worst part is this. Polaris never did anything wrong. He was still the same loyal, gentle dog he'd always been, sweet as ever. But after seeing that thing, after seeing that face in the dark, I could never quite look at him the same way again. I want to tell you about something that happened to me when I was about 12 years old, and honestly, I still don't have an explanation for it. One morning before school, I got up like normal and walked down the hall to the bathroom to brush my teeth. I was standing there, looking into the mirror, when suddenly, everything around me seemed to disappear. I didn't collapse or faint exactly. My body just locked up, completely still, like fear had taken hold of me. What I saw instead was space. Endless, dark space filled with stars. And there I was, somehow floating in it, looking straight ahead at this house in the distance. It looked almost too ordinary, which somehow made it stranger. A pale house with a dark front door in the center, windows on either side, and neat little shrubs out front. It was just sitting there, suspended in the middle of nothing. I started moving toward it, slowly at first, then faster, like I was being pulled in. The closer I got, the more terrified I felt, even though I didn't understand why. And when I finally reached the front door, it opened. There was a woman standing there. She had dark hair, an older face, and something about her was deeply wrong. I still can't describe it properly. She didn't look like anyone I knew. She looked almost human, but not fully. Like a face that had all the right pieces, but put together in a way that made every instinct in me panic. The second I saw her, she screamed, and just like that, I was back in the bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror. I was still frozen, completely terrified. It felt like the kind of fear that clings to you after a nightmare, when your body hasn't caught up to the fact that you're awake. It probably only lasted a few seconds, maybe a minute at most, but it felt much longer. The strange part is, it didn't stop there. The next morning, it happened again. Same bathroom, same feeling, same stars, same house, same door, same woman. After that, it kept happening on and off for a few weeks. Some days were normal, and then without warning, it would come back. Always exactly the same. When people ask me what the woman looked like, I still struggle to explain it. The closest I can come is that she looked uncanny. Not monstrous, not ghostly in the usual way, just off. Like something pretending to be human, but missing some invisible piece that makes a face feel safe or familiar. That was the worst part. The fear was immediate and overwhelming, every single time. It felt almost like stepping out of the world for a moment. My eyes were open, and I was still standing up, but I wasn't seeing the room around me anymore. I was somewhere else. I told my parents, but they didn't know what to make of it. At the time, I was younger and probably couldn't explain it very well. They thought maybe I was half asleep, still caught between dreaming and waking. So we waited to see if it would pass. For a little while, it seemed like it had. Then one Sunday afternoon, it happened again. Except this time, I was fully awake, in the middle of the day. My dad was watching football in the living room, and I was behind the couch putting some things away. Suddenly, there it was again. The freezing, the fear, the space, the house, the woman. When it ended, I just broke down crying. I went straight to my dad, and he could tell something was wrong. I told him it had happened again. That was the moment it really scared me, because it wasn't just happening first thing in the morning anymore. I wasn't sleepy. I wasn't alone. I was home, with my family, in a place where I should have felt safe. My parents took me to the doctor, and he listened, but he didn't really have answers either. He told us to wait and see if it stopped. After that appointment, it barely happened again for a long time. Part of me even wondered if finally telling someone everything had somehow loosened its grip on me. Then, about a year later, when I was 14, we moved overseas for my dad's work. The last time it ever happened was on the first morning in our new house. And then it was gone. I'm 27 now, and I still think about it. I still don't know what it was. A vision? Some kind of sleep-related episode? Something neurological? Something my mind created under stress? I honestly can't say. I just know it felt real while it was happening, and the fear was unlike anything I've felt before or since. So that's my story. I still don't have answers, but I've never forgotten a second of it. When my husband and I got married in 2016, we moved into a duplex on a military base, and that place honestly never felt normal. I still think about it sometimes because there were so many things that happened there, and even now I cannot really put them in perfect order. It all kind of lives in my memory as these separate moments that made the whole house feel wrong. One of the first things I remember happened at the back of the house. We had this screened-in porch with French doors leading out to it, and then another screen door that opened into the yard. One night, the screen door was latched, the back door was locked, and I heard this knocking sound on the glass. At first, I told myself I was imagining it because my dog did not react. But then it happened again, and this time, she definitely heard it. She jumped off the couch, went straight to the door, and just started growling. Her fur was standing up, and she kept staring at the glass like someone was right there. But there was nothing. Absolutely nothing. She stayed like that for what felt like 10 minutes while the knocking kept happening. I finally called my neighbor and asked him to quietly go around back to see if somebody was messing with us, but he found no one out there. A couple of weeks later, we had some friends over, just hanging out in the kitchen. From there, you could see the same back door and part of the living room window facing the yard. One of our friends, Nate, suddenly said, "There's someone at your back window." We all turned to look, and there was nobody there. Then, almost right on cue, we heard another knock on the glass door. Nate took off outside immediately, certain he had seen someone, but once again, there was no one there. When he came back inside, he looked completely shaken. He said he could have sworn he saw a man in a dark gray shirt standing there, just staring into the house. Then there was the night we threw a party. We had maybe 20 people over, and the dining room was the main place everyone gathered because it was big enough for games and a folding table. A bunch of the neighbors from the connected units were there too, which is why what happened next freaked everybody out. We heard this knocking start on the shared wall in the living room, and it kept going, almost traveling along the wall until it reached the dining room where we all were. At first I laughed because I was sure the neighbors were trying to scare us. But the look on their faces told me they were not joking. They were just as unnerved as the rest of us. Eventually, they went back to check their side of the duplex, and nobody was in there. The place was still locked up. Another time, I was lying on my bed on my stomach, texting, with my back to the bedroom door. I heard footsteps coming up the stairs, and I assumed it was my husband coming home, so I did not think much of it. I just kept looking at my phone. Then I saw a shadow move across the wall in front of me, like somebody had stepped into the doorway behind me. I sat up, already smiling, ready to turn around and say hi, and there was no one there. Nobody. I left that room so fast and spent the rest of the afternoon downstairs trying to calm myself down. And then there were the stairs. I cannot even fully explain why, but I hated them. Almost every single time I walked down them, I would get this cold rush down my spine that made me pull my shoulders tight and brace myself. I always felt like something was right behind me, just close enough to make me panic. I remember thinking more than once that one day I was going to be pushed down those stairs. Nothing ever did happen, but the fear never left. It was just always there, waiting for me every time I had to go up or down. That duplex gave me some of the strangest, heaviest feelings I have ever had in a home. Even now, years later, I can still picture those rooms and feel that tension all over again. Some places just do not feel empty, even when they are. I've had strange experiences for as long as I can remember, and even now, I still don't fully know what to make of them. Some of it could probably be explained away as childhood imagination. I know that. But not all of it. Some moments have stayed with me too clearly, too sharply, to just brush aside. When I was very little, maybe around 3 or 4, we lived in an older house where I used to see something I could never explain. It looked like a tall shadow, almost human, except it had these long ears that reminded me of a hare. It never rushed at me or did anything dramatic. It would just appear nearby, moving from one spot to another, like it was wandering through the house. I was so young that part of me wonders if I was only seeing things. But even then, that house felt wrong in a way I couldn't put into words. It always carried this heavy feeling, like someone was quietly watching from just out of sight. It didn't feel violent or hateful, just deeply unsettling. After we moved away, everything seemed to stop for a while. For some reason, I thought maybe I had outgrown whatever it was. But when I was about 6, it all started again. My room in the new house never felt normal. I hated being in there by myself. Even during the day, it felt like the air was different in that room, like something was waiting for me to notice it. Whenever I was alone, I'd get this awful sense that something was about to happen. Sleeping there was hard for years. I would lie awake with that same feeling of being watched, just hoping the night would pass quietly. And a lot of the time, it didn't. I'd hear sounds I couldn't explain. Little knocks, shifting noises, things tipping over for no clear reason. Sometimes objects would disappear and then show up again later in places I knew I hadn't left them. My door would slowly open on its own. Every now and then, I'd even feel what seemed like a soft touch, almost like something brushing against my arm or shoulder. None of it was dramatic enough to prove anything, but it was enough to make me dread being alone. One of the first moments that really terrified me involved a small stuffed wolf I had when I was around that age. One night it was lying on the floor across the room. I remember glancing away for just a second, and when I looked back, it had moved a little closer. Then it happened again. Every time I turned away, even briefly, it seemed nearer than before. It sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, but I know what I saw. Eventually, one of my parents moved it out of the room, and after that, nothing else happened with that toy. Years later, though, I got another stuffed animal, this time a medium-sized fox plush. That one felt different right away. Oddly enough, it felt comforting, but at the same time it carried that same familiar sense that I was not alone. I started noticing it in different positions from where I knew I'd left it. Once in a while, one of its limbs would brush against me, so lightly I'd almost convince myself I imagined it. And there were times when even its expression seemed a little different, though I know how impossible that sounds. Neither toy was electronic. There were no batteries, no mechanisms, nothing that should have made them move. And I never got the sense that they were trying to hurt me. That's part of what made it all so confusing. It felt eerie, yes, but not purely malicious. Just strange. Too strange. What makes me question myself less is how my cats react. Whenever they come into my room, they'll fix their eyes on one corner or one empty stretch of space and just stare. Not casually either, but intensely, like they're tracking something I can't see. Sometimes they'll step forward slowly, watching whatever it is. But they never stay in the room long. After a few minutes, they always want out. There have been other moments in this house too, things that didn't happen only to me. My mother once insisted that the insides of a few pieces of furniture had somehow been taken out or shifted around, even though no one had done it. My brother said he saw something back in the old house, and later claimed he'd caught sight of something here too. Mostly just quick glimpses, movement around a doorway, the feeling that someone had just disappeared around a corner. I still don't know what to believe. Maybe some of it really is my mind trying to make sense of ordinary things. I've considered that more times than I can count. But when I put all of it together, the years of it, the feelings, the movement, the sounds, the way other people and even animals seem to react, it becomes harder and harder to dismiss. I'm not saying I know for sure that it's paranormal. I just know that something has followed me through too many years of my life to feel completely unreal. And whatever it is, it has never fully left. A few nights ago, I was driving home and saw something I still can't stop thinking about. It was that in-between time in the evening, just after sunset. The streetlights had come on, but it wasn't fully dark yet. You know that kind of light where you can still make out colors and details clearly, but everything already feels a little quieter, a little heavier. That was the kind of evening it was. I was taking my usual way home, nothing out of the ordinary. I had already been in the car for over an hour, and I was maybe 15 minutes from home when I got off my exit and turned onto the next road. As I was driving, I noticed what I first thought was just a man walking along the side of the street. At first, it didn't seem strange, just someone walking. But the closer I got, the stronger this awful feeling became. It hit me so suddenly and so clearly. I felt, without a word being spoken, that he wanted me to stop. Not just stop, but let him come with me. And I know how strange that sounds, but it was like I could feel his intention before I even fully saw him. There was something deeply wrong about it. Dark, heavy, almost like this pull coming from him. I knew in that instant that whatever this was, it did not feel safe. He was walking on the same side of the road I was driving on, and as I got a little closer, I started realizing something about him wasn't normal. He had the shape of a man, but everything about him was black. Not skin tone, I mean all of him. His clothes looked black, like dark pants and a hooded sweatshirt with the hood up, but there were no folds, no texture, no detail at all. Just a solid shape. I don't even remember seeing shoes. I slowed down for a second, just enough to look more carefully, because by then, that feeling was so intense I couldn't ignore it. And that's when I saw it more clearly. He wasn't just dressed in black. He was darker than black. Like a void. Like something that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. Then, as I got close enough to really see him, he turned his head and looked right at me. That was the part that shook me the most. Where his face should have been, there was nothing. No features. No eyes, no mouth, no expression. Just the same impossible darkness as the rest of him. It wasn't a face. It was the outline of a face filled with pure black. The kind of black you only see in a completely dark room with no light at all. Just this human shape with a hood, but no visible details anywhere. I've heard people describe shadow figures before, and honestly, it looked exactly like that. Exactly like those stories in those clips people talk about, the kind you never fully believe until you see something yourself. It rattled me. It still does. The feeling coming from him was so strong. I can't explain it any better than this. I knew he wanted me to stop. I knew he wanted to come with me, or maybe with someone, and every part of me was telling me not to let that happen. So I didn't stop. The second I saw that empty, dark face, I pressed the gas and kept going. And I'm glad I did. When I checked my rearview mirror, he was still walking down the road, but I could still feel him watching me as I drove away. Welcome back to the Paranormal M channel, everyone. How was your day? Drop a comment down below and let me know. Thank you so much for always supporting the channel and for sharing so many of your mysterious experiences with us. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any new videos. And now, without further ado, let's hop into bed, switch on the bedside lamp, pull up the covers, and dive into today's mysterious stories. So, my Aunt Marisol lives in Mexico City with my Uncle Tavo, and basically a whole village of relatives. Cousins, nieces, nephews, everybody. They own this 4-story building on a busy street, and it's one of those places where it feels like there's always someone awake, always someone cooking, always a door opening somewhere. The ground floor is all little family shops, like a hardware store and a small clothing spot. And then the upper floors are where everyone lives. Rooms packed, extra mattresses, people rotating in and out. It's loud in a warm way, you know? Like chaos, but family chaos. We visited a couple times a year, and most of the time it was normal. Loud, fun, exhausting. But one trip, something felt off in a way I can still remember in my stomach. It started small. One afternoon, my cousins and I were playing hide and seek. I decided to hide in my cousin Jimena's room. She had 2 beds, one near the window and the other closer to this narrow, unused staircase tucked into the corner. Like a stairwell that didn't really feel like it belonged inside a bedroom. I went for the bed near the window and slid underneath it, trying not to laugh. And I swear to you, the second I got under there, I heard the bed above me creak like someone climbed up onto it. Not just a little shift either. It sounded like bouncing, like weight, like the mattress springs complaining in that squeaky way beds do when someone is moving around on top. But I was alone. No one had followed me in. No footsteps. No door. Nothing. I froze for a second, holding my breath like maybe I'd hear someone giggling, like it was a prank. But it was just that creaking, and then this weird pause, like the room itself was listening. I crawled out so fast I almost smacked my head on the frame, and I didn't even try to act casual. I just left the room and was like, yeah, I'm done. I didn't want to play anymore. I didn't even want to be on that floor. And later that night, this is where it really gets to me. We all slept in the same room. My mom, my sister Daniela, and me. My mom and I shared the bed that was closer to that unused staircase, and Daniela took the other bed near the window. I couldn't sleep, so I stayed up watching videos on my mom's phone with my earbuds in, trying to relax. It was one of those nights where you're tired but your brain won't shut up. Then I started hearing something, even with the earbuds. At first I thought I was imagining it, like maybe the sound was part of the video. So I lowered the volume. Still heard it. I sat up, heart pounding, And I swear I didn't even want to pull the earbuds out because it felt safer to pretend it wasn't real. But I finally did. And the sound got clear. It sounded like heavy footsteps on the stairs, right next to our bed. Like someone was climbing up fast, like they were angry or in a hurry. And then there was this fluttering sound, like paper whipping through the air, and this sharp crinkling like plastic bags being handled. And this is the part that made my blood go cold. What sounded like someone talking, muffled, like a conversation you can't quite understand through a wall. It was around 2-something in the morning, maybe closer to 3. My first thought was, rat. Like, okay, big building, old stairs, a rat got into something. But no rat sounds like that. No rat makes footsteps that heavy. And the noises didn't stay small. They grew louder, like whatever it was getting closer. Like it was moving up the staircase beside me. I whispered my sister's name and tried to wake her up. When she finally stirred, I almost snapped at her to be quiet because I was so desperate to hear if it was real or if I was half dreaming. She wouldn't. That freaked me out almost as much as the sounds, honestly, because it felt like whatever was happening, it was happening to me, like I was the only one who was allowed to be aware of it. Eventually the noises faded and I just collapsed back down. Like my brain couldn't hold fear that long. I fell asleep with my whole body tense. The next morning at breakfast, I told everyone. I tried to laugh it off, but I could tell my face wasn't matching the joke. And my sister, Daniela, looked right at me and was like, I heard it too. That's when my Aunt Marisol got quiet. Like, real quiet. And she told us something I still wish I'd never heard. She said years earlier, the neighbors right next door, this family with 2 sons and their parents, had something terrible happen. One of the sons was unstable, struggling for a long time, and one day, the mother made lunch, called everyone to eat, and the son attacked her. My aunt described it in this shaken way, like she hated even remembering it. She said there were screams, horrible screams, and loud banging, the kind that makes your hands go numb. The police came, paramedics came, and my aunt and uncle saw them take the mother out. She said the son looked like he wasn't even himself, like his face wasn't his, like something else had climbed into him and was wearing him like a coat. After that, the family fell apart, and the other son, the one who was left, didn't handle it. According to my aunt, he started acting strangely, disappearing, showing up on rooftops. People in the neighborhood would sometimes see him jumping between buildings, and she swore he'd been spotted hiding up on their 4th floor before, like he was slipping into spaces where he shouldn't have been able to get. And after all of that, my aunt said they started experiencing things. Shadows where there shouldn't be shadows. Strange laughter in the hallway. Once, she said, a neighbor swore they saw a woman-shaped figure on a balcony, like a person, but washed out, like light was passing through her. I didn't know what to do with that information. I just sat there stirring my food like my spoon weighed 50 pounds. But the trip still wasn't done with me. Later that day, I was downstairs in the hardware store with my older cousin Sergio. It was quiet, just the 2 of us sitting near the counter, facing each other, talking about nothing. A few feet away were shelves stacked with boxes and supplies. Earlier, my aunt had placed a light bulb, still in its cardboard box, up on one of the highest shelves. I watched her do it. She laid it flat, deep on the shelf, like it couldn't just slide off by accident. Then she went upstairs. Sergio and I turned to look out toward the street for a second. Cars, people walking, normal life. And then he said something, and I turned back toward him. And right as we turned, out of the corner of both our eyes, we saw it. That boxed light bulb, like it got punched from behind, shot off the shelf and flew toward us. Toward me. It didn't tumble down like gravity pulled it. It moved forward like something aimed it. It landed on the floor near my feet with this hard smack, like it wanted me to know it arrived. Sergio and I just stared at each other, eyes wide, not even speaking at first. Because what do you say? Hey, did you just see physics break? We both knew my aunt had put it away securely. We both knew no one was near the shelf. There was no breeze, no shaking, no explanation that made sense. And in that moment, all I could think was, is this the same thing from upstairs? Is it the staircase? Is it the neighbor's tragedy bleeding into this building somehow? I don't know. And honestly, I get it. Because once you feel a house notice you, it's hard to ever feel safe inside it again. So this all went down around late 2019, right before everything in my life was finals, stress, and barely sleeping. My dad has this great aunt. Her name was Aunt Lila, and she'd been battling breast cancer for a while. She was one of those women who felt like part of the core of the family, you know? Especially to my mom, and to Mira, her only daughter. They were close in that quiet, everyday way, like the kind of closeness that doesn't need big speeches. After Aunt Lila passed, something happened that still gives me chills when I think about it. On the second night after the funeral, Mira fell asleep at her house, surrounded by relatives, the whole place still heavy with grief. And then, she started sleepwalking. Which is wild on its own, because she'd never done that before in her life. Apparently, she sat up suddenly and said over and over something like, "My mom is outside. I have to let her in. She's right there." And then she got up, eyes not really awake, and walked straight toward the front door. Everyone was panicking, trying to wake her, calling her name, grabbing her shoulders gently. But she was determined, like she was on a mission. And right as her hand reached the doorknob, right as her fingers were about to turn it, she suddenly snapped awake, like someone flipped a switch. She froze, looked confused, and stepped back. That was the first and only time she ever sleepwalked or talked in her sleep. Ever. I didn't even know any of this at the time. My mom kept it from me because she knows I'm sensitive. Like, once something gets into my head, it lives there. The next day, there was this local mourning ritual we do, kind of a standard thing in our area to honor someone who's passed and bring peace to the house. My mom and my younger brother went. They came back around 9 p.m. My bedroom is right beside the porch, and my parents' room is right next to mine. Usually when they come home late, I crack my door so they can walk through quietly without fumbling with keys and lights. That night, I opened my door, then ran to the back to help them get in because they went around back to wash up first. I remember doing this little zigzag through the house, front, back, front again, half on autopilot. Eventually, I came back to my room, closed the door, and collapsed into bed. And this detail matters. I sleep under a mosquito net. It's one of those nets that hangs down and tucks around you like a thin little tent. That night, I pulled it down like usual, because mosquitoes here don't play. I was half asleep, like floating between dreaming and waking, when I felt it. That feeling that someone is standing too close. Not a noise, not a shadow at first, just presence. Like the air in the room had weight. I opened my eyes, and I saw a figure, just a silhouette, moving in the pale porch light that comes through my window panes. It wasn't fully in the room the way a normal person would be. It was more like the shape of someone was there, and the light made it visible. And I swear to you, I heard it. Not with my ears exactly, but in that way you sometimes hear something in your head when you're dreaming. It was asking me to come with it. Not angrily, not screaming, more like a patient insistence. Like, come on, get up, let's go. And I, in my exhausted, sleep-drunk brain, refused. I was so tired. I'd been studying all day. I remember thinking, "Not now, please. I just want to sleep." Until it grabbed me. Something clutched my arm hard and pulled me upward until I was sitting straight up, and instantly, all the sleep vanished like cold water to the face. My heart was pounding so violently I could feel it in my throat. I yanked my arm back and realized something that still makes my skin crawl. Whatever grabbed me didn't slide inside the mosquito net. It grabbed me through it. The net was between us, so the pressure was rough and draggy, and when I looked down, the exact spot on my arm hurt, like the fabric had been pressed into my skin by fingers that didn't care about being gentle. I sat there shaking, staring at the window, trying to force my eyes to make sense of what I'd seen. Then I did the only thing my body knew to do. I ran. I bolted straight into my parents' room and climbed into bed with them like I was a little kid again. I didn't even try to explain. I just needed to be near other living, breathing people. I stayed there the rest of the night, and nothing else happened after that. But here's the thing. That year, right before finals, strange stuff kept happening around me. Not always scary, just weird. Like the world was slightly thinner than usual. One night, the evening before my history exam, I dreamed of my late grandfather. Let's call him Grandpa Suresh. He loved history. He used to talk about it like it was gossip, like every king and war was personal business. In the dream, he looked at me the way he used to, all calm and sure, and he basically told me, "You'll do fine. Stop worrying." And I did. I got 96 out of 100. I remember laughing afterward like, okay, what was that? Then there was another morning, bright, normal, nothing spooky, where I was practicing math and accidentally knocked my little medicine bottle off my desk. It rolled under the bed. I saw it go, and I was just too lazy to get down and fish it out. My mom called me to the kitchen for breakfast, so I left it. When I came back later, I walked into my room and stopped dead. The bottle was out from under the bed, and it was standing upside down, like perfectly balanced, right beside my books. I stood there staring at it for a long time, waiting for my brain to offer a normal explanation. Like maybe I moved it without noticing, or maybe someone came in. But nobody had been in my room, and I know I didn't do it. So yeah, a lot happened around that time. But the night at the window, the silhouette, the asking, the hand gripping my arm through the mosquito net, that one is still the most frightening thing I've ever experienced. Even now, years later, sometimes when I'm tired and the porch light spills through a window just right, I catch myself looking at that patch of shadow just for a second longer than I need to. So, I want to tell you about the week my dad died, because it still doesn't feel real, and honestly, the house hasn't felt the same since. My dad, Caleb, passed in the hospital after a long, brutal fight with cancer. The kind where you try to prepare yourself, but your body and your heart just refuse to believe it's actually coming. Afterward, our extended family stayed over for a few nights, because no one wanted my mom to be alone, and none of us really knew what to do with our hands or our thoughts. That first night, things got messy fast. Two of my uncles were outside in the front yard, arguing, really arguing, over old grudges and a property issue that's been simmering for years. And it felt especially cruel, because my dad's biggest wish, the thing he said out loud more than once, was that everyone would stop tearing each other apart and just be a family. He was the oldest, and he was always the one who refused to pick sides. He loved them all, and he hated the way adulthood had turned them into strangers who shared a last name. So there we all were, me, my mom, cousins, a few aunts, watching this fight unfold like a storm we couldn't stop. And then, right when the shouting peaked, this empty glass bottle sitting near the end of the driveway, by the post where the mail gets dropped, just shattered. No one kicked it. No one threw anything. It didn't roll. It wasn't stepped on. It was just standing there, and then it broke, like something snapped it from the inside. And I swear to you, every single person's attention got yanked toward it at the exact same time, like we were all pulled by the same invisible string. The arguing stopped. My uncles went quiet, backed off, and separated. Later, without even coordinating, they both said some version of, "Okay, that's him. That's Caleb telling us to cut it out." The next night, we had this little cousins meeting inside. No dads, no uncles, no older voices dominating everything. Just me, my brother Eli, a few cousins, and my mom sitting off to the side. We were trying to figure out how we could keep the peace, how we could protect our grandpa from the stress, how we could honor what my dad wanted. But instead, we started getting heated too. Not over land, over grief, over frustration, over the unfairness of losing him and then immediately being dragged back into the same family chaos he spent his whole life trying to soften. Voices rose. Someone slammed a hand on the arm of the chair. Someone else started crying. And right in the middle of that, we heard it. A voice, clear as anything, go, "Hey!" Like a sharp little call meant to snap everyone back. And the weirdest part? We all heard it. Me, my cousins, my mom, except Eli. He was sitting farthest from where it seemed to come from, and he just blinked at us like we'd all lost our minds. The next day, my mom went out and bought candles and set up a small altar area for my dad. Not some huge dramatic thing, just a quiet space with a photo, a few of his favorite snacks, flowers he always pointed out when we drove past certain yards. She was arranging it so gently, like she was trying not to startle the grief. But she broke, like fully broke down. The kind of crying that doesn't care if you're breathing right. The kind where it feels like your whole chest is being wrung out. And while she was crying, the candle flames went out. Not one, all of them. And then, the flames came back. Not slowly, not like we relit them. They just returned, as if they'd never gone out at all. My mom went pale like she was going to faint. I had this cold rush go all the way down my arms because I knew what I saw. I knew what we all saw. Later that night, our rabbit, Juniper, started acting completely wild. She was racing around, thumping, darting, stopping like she was listening to something we couldn't hear. Then she came right up to my bedroom door and wouldn't stop until I got up. I called Eli over because it was freaking me out. And Juniper led us straight to the couch, specifically the spot where my dad used to sit and cuddle her when he watched TV. She stopped right there and froze, completely still, ears up, body tight, like she was staring at something standing right in front of her. She stayed like that for what felt like forever, probably a minute or two. Then she suddenly hopped onto the couch, turned in a tight circle, hopped down, and went straight to the hallway. And then she dragged something out. One of my dad's shoes, the pair he wore constantly near the end, pulled right out and dragged in front of the couch like she was placing it there on purpose. I just stood there, mouth open. Because rabbits don't do that. Juniper doesn't do that. And it wasn't random. She brought it to his spot. After the family went home and the house finally got quiet, just me, my mom, Eli, and my partner Mara, it didn't stop. We started hearing things we never heard before. Footsteps in the hallway when everyone was accounted for. A door easing shut when no one was near it. A familiar cough, soft like the one my dad had toward the end, when the house should have been silent. And then the dreams started. Not just one of us, all of us. Different dreams, but the same feeling. Like he was near. Like he was trying to check on us. Like he hadn't fully left the way I thought death meant someone leaves. And what messes with me the most is this. Before all of this, our home was just a home. No paranormal stories, no weirdness, no "I saw a shadow" moments, nothing. So now I'm stuck between grief and fear. Because I miss him so much it makes my throat ache, and a part of me wants to talk to him the way I always did. Just speak out loud. Tell him I love him. Tell him we're taking care of Mom. Tell him I'm trying, even when I don't know what I'm doing. But I'm also scared. Not of him exactly, just of the unknown. I don't want to open some door I can't close. I don't want to invite something in that doesn't belong here. This house has always felt safe, and I don't want to lose that. My mom keeps saying, "Don't be afraid. If anything, it's your father." And I want to believe her. I really do. So I keep turning it over in my head. How do you talk to someone you love who's gone without calling on anything else? Do you just speak to them like they're still part of the room? Does it matter if it's day or night? Do you say their name or avoid it? I don't want to say something that feels disrespectful, like demanding proof, because if it is him, I don't want my love to sound like a challenge. I just want him to know I'm still here, that I still love him, that I'm trying my best to hold this family together the way he always did, and that I'm taking care of the people he worried about most, especially my mom and my brother, because I know he would have wanted that more than anything. So, all of this kicked off maybe 4 months ago. Not that long, which somehow makes it feel worse, because it's like our place went from normal to not normal in a really short stretch of time. I live in a small apartment with my wife, Maya, our son Eli, and our cat Miso. Regular life, you know. Work, school stuff, laundry piles that magically appear overnight. And then one day the apartment just started doing things. The very first moment still messes with my head the most, because it involved me actually talking to someone who wasn't there. I'm in the bedroom at my desk, gaming, and the closet is right to my left, 2 doors. My chair blocks my side, but Maya can still open hers easily. She walks in, opens the closet, grabs something, shuts the door. Totally normal. Then my memory splits from hers. From my point of view, she comes in, grabs whatever she needed, and I catch her in my peripheral vision settling onto the bed behind me. I even get up from my chair and sit down at the foot of the bed with my back to her, because I'm doing that lazy, might as well start laundry thing, picking up clothes off the floor, making a pile. While I'm doing that, I ask, "Hey, do the clothes near your desk need to be washed too?" And without hesitation, she answers, "No, everything on my desk is clean." So I'm like, okay, finish building the laundry pile. Then I turn around to say something else, and the bed is empty. Nobody, not even a dent in the blanket. Instant cold confusion. I walk straight to the living room, and as soon as I see Maya, I go, "Were you just in the room?" And she looks at me like I'm nuts and goes, "No, I've been in the kitchen feeding Miso." I swear my stomach dropped, because I say, "No, you were on the bed. I asked you about laundry." And she goes, "I never laid down. You never asked me anything." So, who did I see get into our bed? And who answered me? That was the first crack. Not long after, there's another night where we're in bed facing each other. My back is to the bedroom door. Maya's facing it. We're half asleep and suddenly she goes stiff, like panicked stiff, and whispers, shaky, "Turn around." I spin fast, expecting, I don't know, anything. Nothing. And she's staring past me, eyes wide, telling me she saw a silhouette, like a person, lean into view from the doorway, like it was peeking around the corner. And when it realized she saw it, it slowly pulled back out of sight. She was terrified. Like the kind of scared where you can't fake it. Neither of us slept. And within that same week, she calls me while I'm out, crying, saying she saw another shadowy figure in the kitchen. After that, it stopped being one weird thing. It became a pattern. One night, it's late. Eli's asleep. Miso's in the room with us. I'm at my desk and Maya's in bed. Then we hear this loud thud, like something slammed into the bedroom door. I get up fast and there, directly in front of the door, is one of Eli's squishy cube toys, those dense stress toy things. This one's heavy. It doesn't bounce. And our carpet is thick. The weird part is, that toy had been sitting on the dresser. The dresser isn't close enough for it to just fall and somehow smack the door that hard. We tested it, slid it off gently, dropped it a bunch of ways. Every time it only landed a couple inches away from the dresser. To get where it ended up, it would have had to be thrown. Hard enough to hit the door and make that noise. So, cool. Great. Then my headphones disappear. I'm one of those people who always put stuff back in the same place. My headphones stay in their box unless I'm literally using them. I knew they were in there because I'd taken a photo of them recently to sell them, empty. I come home and we tear the apartment apart. Under couches, inside drawers, behind everything, the closet, laundry baskets, everywhere. Gone. A couple days later, Maya opens the closet and just freezes. My headphones are hanging on a coat hanger, hooked neatly with one of my jackets I haven't worn in forever. And we had both been in that closet multiple times since they vanished. So either one of us somehow missed them, or someone put them back where we definitely notice. And then there's the iron. We keep the iron on the top shelf of our closet. That's just where it lives. Neither of us uses it much, but we both know where it is. One afternoon, I'm grabbing something from Eli's closet and I look down, and the iron is on the floor. Eli can't reach those shelves, not even close. I wait until Maya gets home and ask her if she moved it or used it. She swears she didn't. And I believe her, because at this point, neither of us is playing pranks. We're past that. We're too tired and too freaked out. Then comes the marble situation. A couple nights ago, we're asleep, and both of us get jolted awake by this sharp metallic clank, like something hard hit metal. It sounds like it came from my desk area, so I get up and look around. Wedged between the desk leg and the wall is a marble. We're both standing there like, where did that come from? We try to rationalize it. Maybe it was on my desk and rolled off, hit the leg on the way down, made the noise. Okay, fine. I go to the bathroom, come back a minute later, and the marble is sitting on my pillow, right where my head had been. Maya's already drifted back to sleep, but I wake her up immediately like, did you put this here? She's groggy but instantly serious, swearing she didn't touch it. I get this full-body goosebump wave and I don't even think. I just grab the marble and toss it outside. A night or two later, I'm at my desk again. Everything looks normal. I shift some stuff around, nothing strange. Later, Maya sits in my chair and goes, "Why is there a marble on your desk?" A marble. Again. And here's the thing. Eli lost marble privileges forever ago because he tried to put one in his mouth. We got rid of the ones we found. So where are these marbles coming from? After that, I start using the bathroom with the door cracked. Because before all this, I'd had times where the bathroom door would get knocked on, multiple knocks, when I was home alone. My logic was, door open means nobody can do the creepy knock thing. One day, I'm on the toilet, no phone, charging in the other room, and I know Maya is in Eli's room with him. I know she hasn't left. While I'm sitting there, I see Maya walk from the living room into Eli's room. I call out immediately, "You just walked in there?" And she answers from inside the room, "No, I didn't. I've been in here." We check. She hadn't moved. She was in there the whole time. So, what did I just see? And then, as if that wasn't enough, the apartment starts leaving stains. Not like normal messes, like wrong messes. I go to my desk one day and there's a paper towel sitting there with heavy black stains, like someone wiped up ink. No smell, no obvious source. And Maya would never just leave trash on my desk. I ask her. She's like, "No, I didn't do that." I freak out and burn the paper towel in the kitchen sink because in my head I'm like, fire cleanses, right? Just get rid of it. I go back to my desk, and now there are 2 black drips on it, like something appeared after I burned the towel. I touch it carefully and it's a black liquid, slightly sticky. I wipe it up and it stains the wipes the same way the paper towel was stained. Whatever got on my monitor was already dry by then, like it had been there longer than it should have. Then it happens again a day or 2 later. I pick Maya up. We grocery shop, come home, unpack, start dinner. I go to turn on the TV, and there are 2 black drips on the screen. Same exact look. Same no smell, no explanation. I clean it off and just stand there, staring at the blank TV like it's about to blink at me. And then today, this is the one that really made me feel sick. I grab my wallet before leaving, and the paper underneath it is stained with that same black mess. My wallet has fresh stains too, like it happened recently, not days ago. I didn't even debate it. I dumped everything out and threw the wallet away. So that's where we're at. Little pieces of our normal life getting touched by something we can't see, can't explain, and can't predict. And the worst part is, it doesn't feel random anymore. It feels like whatever it is knows when we're paying attention. And it really, really likes letting us know it's still here. So, my grandma died at the very end of September, and the part that still makes me pause is that it happened on her birthday. 93 years old, and she left right around lunchtime, like she'd kept her own quiet appointment with the day. She'd been in hospice a little over 3 weeks, and I should probably back up, because the family situation matters here. My grandma, Maeve, had 4 sons. Most of them barely spoke to her anymore. My dad, Declan, the youngest, still did. And as far as grandkids go, I was the one who kept showing up. Not because I was some saint or anything, it just happened. We connected in this really unexpected way over the outdoors, wildlife, bird calls, the little dramas of the woods. She had this soft spot for small creatures, and somehow, I did too. There was a squirrel that used to come around. She swore it recognized her. I started calling it our regular, and she'd brighten up every time it showed. A few days before she died, one of the nurses actually let me bend the rules a little. I brought that little visitor in, just for a moment, just near the window, so Maeve could see it again. I know how that sounds, but it mattered to her. It mattered to me. It felt like letting her say goodbye to something simple and good. When she first went into hospice, my 2 sisters came by, and a couple cousins too. They stayed a few days each, did their visits, said their words, and then left to go back to their lives. And I don't say that to judge them. People do what they can handle. But after that first wave of visitors faded, it was mostly me. I stayed, night after night. I slept in that stiff recliner in the room, some nights barely sleeping at all, because I couldn't stand the idea of her waking up and finding strangers instead of someone she knew. I learned the rhythm of the machines, the timing of the nurses' rounds, the way the light in the hallway changed when it got late. And I ended up being the one making the calls. Meds, comfort measures, the little choices that add up when someone is slipping away and you're trying to keep them from suffering. And here's where it gets hard to explain. That side of my family carries grudges like heirlooms, old, dense resentments, passed down and polished until they feel justified. I'd heard it my whole life. The stories, the bitterness, the ways people spoke around certain names like they were stepping over broken glass. I'd even spoken out about it at my grandfather's funeral when I was younger, because it always felt like something poisonous that no one wanted to admit was in the water. A few days into being there, I started to feel something. Not fear exactly, more like pressure, like the air had weight. The best way I can describe it is the sensation of two magnets repelling each other, like there was a force in the room that didn't want to be near me, and I didn't want it near her. It felt oppressive, like something had wandered too close and was testing the edges of the space. One night, Maeve woke up panicked, really panicked, and she kept insisting there was a big black dog coming for her. She was trembling, eyes wide, scanning the room like she could see it right there. I know there are all kinds of stories across cultures about black dogs. Guardians, omens, messengers, sometimes comforting, sometimes terrifying. I'm not an expert in any of it. I don't pretend to understand what that image means in every tradition. I just know what she said, and I know what it felt like in that room when she said it. At one point, I asked the chaplain to come in. A nurse stayed too. We didn't make a spectacle of it. We just prayed. Quietly. Plainly. Like people do when they don't have fancy words, but they do have instincts. And my gut, my whole body really, kept telling me whatever that heaviness was, it was tangled up in the family's unforgiveness. Like all that stored up hatred had left something behind. Not a metaphor, something you could feel, something that fed off it. The strange part is, I wasn't the only one. The nurse admitted she felt it. The chaplain paused in this way that told me he felt it too, even if he didn't want to give it a dramatic name. And my dad, Declan, he felt it. He never used the same words I did, but I could see it in his face. That uneasy recognition, like he'd walked into a room and realized the temperature was wrong. But here's the thing that still sticks with me. When I was there, it didn't come close. It was like it hovered at the edge, pacing outside the door, but wouldn't step into the room. And the whole time, I had this steady, unshakable sense that I wasn't there by accident, that I was meant to keep watch. Like I'd been assigned a quiet duty. Stand guard until she was safely gone. And that doesn't match my personality, honestly. I'm not someone who goes looking for paranormal stuff. I don't chase spooky stories. Most of my life is the opposite. These days, I live in a little camper out in the woods with my dog and a couple rescues I've taken in, half feral creatures that needed patience more than anything. The woods are peaceful. Even when they're loud, they're peaceful. I've seen death out there too, natural death, the kind that's sad but not cruel. I've done wildlife rehab. I've stayed up through brutal nights, done long shifts, held animals while they passed, helped them when they didn't. I've been around endings enough that I'm not easily shaken. But I have never, ever felt anything like what I felt in that hospice room. I can't tell you with certainty what it was. I can't put a clean label on it and wrap it up like a lesson. All I know is that something felt wrong, real enough that other people sensed it too, and that when I stayed beside Maeve, it was like the room held, like the line held. And then, on her birthday, around noon, she went quiet and finally let go. Sometimes I think about that little woodland visitor near the window and how her face softened when she saw it. Sometimes I think about the heaviness and the way prayer seemed to thin it out like fog lifting. And sometimes I just think about the simple fact that she didn't wake up alone. Not once. Not at the end. And I guess what I'm still wondering is, has anyone else ever been in a situation like that? Where grief and old resentment felt like more than emotions, like they changed the air. where you felt like you were standing watch over someone, and you didn't even fully understand why, only that you had to. Because I'm still carrying it. Not in a way that scares me every day, more in a way that makes me look at forgiveness differently. Like it isn't just being nice, it's clearing something out, making room, letting the living breathe, and letting the dying leave in peace. Okay, so this just happened, and I'm still a little keyed up talking about it. I live on the third floor of this older apartment building in Brooklyn, and I was home alone, half zoned out on the couch with the TV on. Nothing dramatic, just one of those quiet evenings where you're finally exhaling. And then, bang! This insanely loud crack, like it happened right in front of my face. Not like a long rumble or a series of noises. One single, sharp, violent snap, loud enough that my ears actually hurt for a second. The closest comparison I can make is one firecracker going off indoors. It had that same, too close feeling that makes your whole body jump before your brain catches up. My first thought was electrical, like a circuit shorting out, or a breaker doing something terrifying, because it sounded exactly like what I imagine a sudden electrical discharge would sound like. So I froze and did that quick scan you do when you're trying to figure out if you're about to see smoke. Sniffing the air, staring at outlets, listening for any follow-up. But there was no smell, no heat, no smoke, no flickering lights. The TV stayed on. The router stayed on. Everything worked like nothing happened, which somehow made it worse because if nothing's broken, then what was that? I texted my downstairs neighbor Maya because I honestly needed to confirm I hadn't hallucinated it. She replies almost immediately like, "I heard it too. Thought you dropped something heavy on the floor." And she's not even directly under the spot where it happened. She's across the hall and kind of on the other side of the building layout. So for her to hear it that clearly, it had to be loud. So now I'm in full detective mode, creeping around the living room like I'm in a horror movie, trying to find evidence. I'm checking the ceiling, the walls, the floorboards, looking for, I don't even know, a fallen screw, a cracked tile, something, anything. But there's nothing, no damage, no object out of place, no clue. And I swear, I had that physical reaction people describe when they say, my hair was standing on end. Like that prickly feeling across your arms and neck, like your body is warning you before you've even figured out why. Then my partner Lena walks in, literally minutes later. I blurt the whole thing out, probably way too fast. She's only home for a second because she has to run out to an event, but she steps into the area where the sound happened, and she stops. Because her hair starts lifting. Not like wind, not like humidity, like static. Like that weird, invisible electricity you feel when you touch a doorknob in winter. She just kind of looks at me like, do you feel that? And for a split second, it reminds me of those stories people tell about the moments right before a lightning strike, when the air gets charged and your body reacts before you even realize what's happening. And that's when, honestly, I started thinking about the other weird stuff. Earlier that morning, Lena had told me she watched a roll of aluminum foil slide off a shelf and tumble onto the floor like someone flicked it. Not like it slowly slipped, like it was tossed. She'd laughed it off at first, but it clearly bothered her because she brought it up again later like, I know this sounds ridiculous, but I really saw it move. Then there's this other thing that happened a few weeks back. I have a framed photo of my dad and my uncle. My uncle passed away a few years ago. That photo fell, and the frame cracked. And it wasn't perched on the edge or in some sketchy, wobbly spot. It was stable. We both remember that, because we even talked about how odd it was. So I'm standing in my living room after this ear-splitting crack, feeling static in the air, thinking about flying aluminum foil and a broken frame, and this new guy nobody seems to like. And this thought slips in that I don't even want to say out loud. Like, what if my uncle is trying to get my attention? Not in some cheesy movie way, more like, if there were a way for someone to nudge reality, maybe it would look like small, dumb, physical stuff. Something you can't fully prove, but you can't fully ignore either. And the timing, right after meeting this boyfriend, makes my brain connect dots whether I want it to or not. But here's the thing. I don't want this to be paranormal. I want it to be explainable. Because if it's electrical or structural, I need to deal with it like an adult and not like I'm starring in a ghost story. So I'm torn between two tracks in my head. One track is, okay, is there such a thing as a loud electrical discharge inside an apartment that leaves no smell, no scorch marks, nothing? The other track is, why does this feel like something is trying to get my attention? And why do the little details keep stacking up? And I'm left with this question that I honestly can't answer from my couch. Is this the kind of thing other people have experienced? Some loud, sudden crack like an electrical snap with weird static, without anything actually breaking? Or is this exactly the kind of moment where you stop theorizing, call the landlord, and get someone to inspect the wiring, outlets, and anything structural before you shrug it off as spooky? Because right now, I'm not sleeping great either way. Okay, so I need to tell you something that's been sitting heavy on my chest, because I can't shake it, and even saying it out loud makes my skin prickle a little. Here's the backstory. My grandpa, well, in my family we called him Frank, died back in the late 80s. It wasn't a long illness. Cancer came fast, like it had been waiting just off stage and finally stepped into the light. A few years ago, my family moved into his old house. Same walls, same layout, the same quiet nighttime creaks you can't ever fully get used to. And after we'd been here a while, my dad told me a story about Frank that he had clearly been holding on to for years. I'm talking, my dad is not dramatic. He's not the type to tell ghost stories for fun. But when he told me this, his face changed, like he was back there again, watching it happen. He looked genuinely scared. According to my dad, not long before Frank got sick, he had this experience in the middle of the night. Frank was asleep in bed and this is the part that makes my stomach knot. Something grabbed him by the ankles and yanked him hard, dragging him down and off the mattress, like he was being pulled out of safety. Frank was convinced it was death. Not like a metaphor, like a literal thing coming for him. And then, not too long after that, weeks, not years, he was diagnosed. That story freaked me out when I first heard it, I'm not gonna lie. But my grandma, Marlene, lived in this same house for decades after he passed. She stayed here a long time, lived to a really old age, and nothing ever happened to her. So I filed the whole thing away under creepy but probably a one-time thing, and I went on with my life. Until last night. I don't even know how to explain the beginning properly, because it was that hazy, half in, half out of sleep kind of moment. But at some point, I jolted awake, like something in me hit a panic button, and I saw a figure beside the bed. Not a clear face, not details, just a shape, a shadow that looked placed, like it was standing where a person would stand, close enough that it felt personal, like it was there for me. I completely freaked out. I grabbed my husband, his name is Eli, and I shouted his name until he stirred. But the second I moved, the figure was gone. Just gone. Like it had never been there at all. And I did what people do when reality feels too weird to hold. I tried to explain it away. I told myself I'd been dreaming, or my eyes were still adjusting, or my brain was doing that thing where it turns darkness into shapes. So I laid back down, I tried to breathe. I tried to go to sleep. But then I had this dream. And it wasn't like a normal dream with a storyline. It was more like a feeling turned into an image. I dreamt this black. Something came onto the bed. Not a person. Not smoke exactly. More like a dark mass that moved like liquid, smooth and slow, spilling across the mattress from the side where I'd seen the figure. In the dream, it flowed over Eli first, like it was crossing him to get to me. And the worst part is, I didn't fight it. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I just went still and let it happen, like my body had decided resisting was pointless. I remember in real life I had curled closer to Eli, away from the side of the bed where that shadow had been. And in the dream, I tried to scoot away from the blackness too, but it still kept coming. Patient, steady. After that, things get fuzzy, like my brain refuses to replay it clearly. And then something happened that wasn't a dream. I woke up to the sound of my dog hitting the floor, but I heard that thump. The unmistakable sound of a body dropping onto the floor. And I hate admitting this, but I didn't turn on the light right away. I didn't jump up. I didn't even check on her like I normally would. It's like something in me went quiet and numb, the way you go numb when you're too scared to confirm what you already suspect. This morning, when I finally woke up for real, Nell was asleep on the floor, in the exact spot where I'd seen the shadow figure standing. Not by Eli, not in one of her usual places. Right there, like she'd chosen it, or like she'd been placed there, or like she'd gone there because she sensed something I didn't fully understand. And ever since I noticed that, I've had this awful crawling feeling under my skin. Like last night didn't end when morning came. I've had bad nights lately, 3 in a row, honestly, but last night was different. Last night felt targeted. And I know how easy it is to say, it was just a dream, but I've had experiences before that make it hard for me to comfort myself with that. Years ago, I had this weird, shared dream with my mom, like we both dreamed the same thing, and it ended up lining up with her death and even the timing of her funeral months later. So when something feels off in that deep, instinctive way, I take it seriously. Maybe too seriously, but I can't help it. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm tired, I'm rattled, and I'm honestly scared to go to sleep tonight. And what I really want to know is, have you ever had a night like that? Where it feels like the house is watching you back? Where you can't tell where the dream ends and something else begins? So, I've only told a few people this, even though it happened a long time ago, back when I was a kid. For years, I kept it locked away, because if I admitted it was real, it felt like I might somehow invite it back. And honestly, I was scared of that. This was around 2009, and I was about 7. My parents had just bought this little farmhouse out in the country, tons of land, the kind of place where the yard doesn't really end, it just turns into trees. There was an old barn, a patch of forest behind it, and this pond that looked like it belonged in a painting. My dad was thrilled because he loved projects, fixing things, building things, always planning the next, we're going to make this place amazing idea. They also had this bigger dream of eventually building a new family home out there for us. But the house we actually lived in at the time was small. 1 story, 2 bedrooms, cozy in that slightly cramped way. And I need to be clear, before this, nothing in that house felt spooky. No weird noises, no creepy cold spots, no, I don't like that hallway feeling. It was just home. Then one morning, I'm in the bathroom brushing my teeth. My dad, let's call him Mark, is in there too, doing his own getting ready stuff. I'm standing at the sink, toothpaste foam, half-awake kid brain, and I turn my head toward my parents' bedroom because you could see straight into it from where I was. And the second I look up, I see it. This pale, white, human-shaped thing, only it wasn't standing. It was down on all fours, like an animal trying to move like a person. It darted across the bedroom, fast, quick enough that my brain almost couldn't catch up, and it slipped behind the end of the bed like it was hiding. What makes my stomach tighten even now is how smooth it was. No stumbling, no hesitation, just this silent, practiced movement. And it never looked at me. I didn't see its face, if it even had one I could recognize. But because I was 7, my first thought wasn't, monster. My first thought was, oh, my little brother is messing around. My brother, Ethan, was about 4 then, and he was the type to do silly stuff just to get a reaction. So I actually giggle. Like, I remember myself smiling, thinking it was funny. Still brushing my teeth, I step out of the bathroom and walk toward the end of the bed, kind of ready to catch him like, haha, got you. I call his name, and I turn the corner expecting to see him crouched there, waiting for me. And there was nothing. Not nothing obvious. Nothing at all. I can still feel that exact moment, my smile just falling off my face. Like my body realized before my mind did that something was wrong. I stood there staring at the empty space, and then I got down and looked under the bed, because surely he'd crawled under there. Empty. No brother. No movement. No sound. I didn't run screaming or anything dramatic, which almost makes it creepier to me. I just quietly backed out of the room and went to check on Ethan. And there he was, asleep in the other bedroom, fully asleep, like he hadn't moved in ages. I never told my dad. I never told my mom. I don't even know why. Maybe because I didn't want it to become real if I said it out loud. Maybe because I didn't want anyone to laugh. Or maybe because some part of me knew that if I talked about it, I'd have to keep thinking about it. And the strangest part is, that was it. I never saw it again. Not once. So, when I was about 11 or 12, my family lived in this creaky old farmhouse at the very top of a hill. It was the oldest place on the street, like it had been standing there stubbornly forever, and it sat a short walk from this city cemetery that clung to the edge of a bluff. People in town had stories about that cemetery. Every so often, cops would end up driving up there late at night because some group had decided the cliff was the perfect place to do ritual stuff, with candles and chanting and all that. I never actually saw any of it myself, but just knowing it happened nearby made the whole area feel charged, like the air held on to bad ideas. Here's how the house was set up. My parents, Marion and Doug, took the upstairs, and I lived downstairs in the basement. Not like finished basement cozy, more like the kind of basement that always feels a little too cool, no matter what season it is. Down there were 2 bedrooms, mine, which was tiny and narrow with a twin bed, and a spare room that had this ridiculous king-sized waterbed left behind by whoever lived there before us. There was also this long, skinny storage space we used like a pantry, and at the very end of that, a door. Behind that door was a sealed-off little room with a big metal tank inside. I assumed it was an old fuel tank from back when the house ran on something more primitive than modern heat. But honestly, the tank wasn't what mattered. That room was just wrong. The upstairs? Totally normal. Sunny, boring, safe. No weird sounds, no shadows, nothing. It was like the house had decided it would behave as long as you stayed up there. But the basement had its own rules. The tank room was basically forbidden without anyone officially saying it out loud. Even with the pantry light on, this weak pull-cord bulb that barely lit anything, you'd see shapes darting through the darkness inside that room. Not, maybe my eyes are playing tricks. Not, a coat hanging funny. I mean, quick, deliberate movement, like something slipping behind something else. And the feeling you got when you cracked the door, it was pure panic. Like your body already knew you were in danger, and it was begging you to run before your brain caught up. Late at night, there were scratching sounds from in there too, thin and persistent, like fingernails on wood or metal. But we never found droppings, nests, chewed wires, nothing. No pests, no rodents, nothing that made sense. The spare bedroom had its own thing, one single weird pattern that I still can't explain. Every once in a while, the waterbed would shift like someone had sat down on it, and then the comforter would show these little dents forming in a line, like the prints an animal would leave walking across a soft surface. Just step, step, step. No cat, no dog, no explanation. Just those tiny depressions moving across the bed like something invisible was taking a stroll. My room was worse. My room had the voices. Not full conversations, not like I could make out a clear sentence, more like murmuring that would swell and dip, like people talking in the next room even when I was alone. Shadows in the corners that didn't behave like normal shadows. Little clicks and thumps that sounded intentional. And lights, lamps, the little pull chain, even a cheap plug-in nightlight, flickering or snapping on and off as if someone was playing with me. And then there were nights where I'd be lying there, still as a statue, and I'd feel something press down onto my body, like a heavy hand on my chest, or a weight sinking into the mattress beside me and then into me. It wasn't sleep paralysis-y in a dreamy way. It felt physical, like my body was being pinned. I had a boombox, big plastic thing, clunky buttons and an old-school radio dial, not digital, no remote. To change stations, you had to actually turn the knob and watch the needle slide. We'd be listening to music, me and my friends or me alone, and suddenly the station would drift out of tune, and we would watch the needle move by itself, slow and steady, like an invisible hand was turning it. It always landed on the same spot, all static. Not a faint station, not talk radio, just harsh, empty hiss. And if you walked over and turned it back to the music station, it would play for a bit. And then, before the next song even ended, it would slide right back to that static again. I don't remember the exact number, but it was up in the high end of the dial. Something like 99 point something. It felt like the basement had a favorite frequency. And then, okay, this is the part that still makes my stomach twist. There used to be an air vent between my parents' room upstairs and my room downstairs. It had been removed before we moved in, but it left this weird setup. Outside my parents' bedroom, there was a vent cover you could lift, and behind it was basically an open channel where the vent used to run. In my ceiling, there was a matching opening, like a square mouth you could reach up into. This was back before cell phones, before cordless phones. We had this one phone with a long cord that could stretch through the house if you dragged it carefully. So sometimes, my parents would drop the phone down through that open vent space, and I could reach up from my bedroom and grab it. The important detail is this. My parents' room was directly above mine. They could stand upstairs and talk in a normal voice, and it sounded like they were right next to me. There was no privacy up there because I could hear everything through that open channel. Casual conversations, little arguments, laughter, all of it, clear as day. So when the worst nights happened, when I'd feel that weight pinning me down and I'd panic and start fighting it, I would scream. Not like a little squeak. I had a loud, sharp scream, the kind you'd think would wake the dead. And yet, not once, not a single time, my parents ever came running. In the morning I'd ask, shaking, angry, confused, "Why didn't you come? Why didn't you help me?" And my mom would frown like I'd spoken another language. My dad would swear he didn't hear anything. They'd look honestly baffled. They could hear me, but they couldn't hear me scream. How does that make sense? How does a normal conversation travel perfectly through that open space, but a scream, my scream, just doesn't exist? That was the detail that made me feel like I was trapped inside a bubble nobody could see. Now, I'll be real with you. As an adult, I've been diagnosed with a mental illness, and I know what people might say. Oh, it was hallucinations. It was anxiety. It was your brain doing brain things. And sure, I've wrestled with that thought myself. But then I remember my friends, because I never told them what I thought was happening. I didn't prime them, I didn't warn them, I didn't give them a spooky speech. They'd just come over, we'd be downstairs listening to music, messing around, being kids, and then they'd freeze and ask why the radio was moving. Or they'd point at the waterbed and go, is something walking on that? Or they'd refuse to go anywhere near that tank room door because they said it felt like standing too close to the edge of a cliff. So I don't know what the explanation is. I don't know if that house was sick, or if something followed the geography, or if the basement just collected fear like dust. I just know that upstairs was normal, and downstairs felt like the house was watching you back. So, my brother, Liam, passed away a little over 3 years ago. He was 35. He'd been fighting alcoholism for a long time, and no matter how many times he tried to climb out of it, it kept pulling him back down. I miss him every day. Before I tell you what happened, I should say this. I've been a paranormal investigator for close to 2 decades, and I'm the annoying kind, honestly. The kind who always looks for the normal explanation first. Drafts, wiring, bad timing, people misremembering. I don't jump straight to ghost just because something feels weird. But this one still sits in my chest. The night Liam died, I was home alone. The kids were staying over at my mother-in-law's, and my wife was on a late shift. I was in the living room, half zoned out, playing on my console, when I heard the front door. Not a creak, not a rattle. The handle went down, clean, deliberate, and the door pushed open from the outside. I paused the game and walked over, expecting, I don't know, maybe a neighbor, maybe someone at the wrong house, maybe even just the wind catching it. I pulled the door open wider and looked out onto the street. No one. I stepped out, looked left and right. Nothing. No footsteps, no voices, no car pulling away. Just empty. I shut the door and slid the little brass security latch across, kind of like a chain but sturdier. Then I went back and sat down. And the moment I dropped into the chair, like my weight had barely settled, it happened again. The handle pressed down. The door pushed inward, harder this time, like someone was leaning their shoulder into it. Only now the latch caught, so the door couldn't swing all the way open. It just thudded into the metal and held there, pushing, insisting. I remember standing up slowly, heart beating in that stupid, confused way, thinking, okay, that's not wind. I didn't sleep much after that. I kept replaying it, trying to be logical. Maybe the latch didn't catch the first time. Maybe the door wasn't fully shut. Maybe... And then, just after midnight, my phone rang. It was my mom. Her voice was shaky in that way you never forget. She'd come home from work and found Liam, gone, lying on his bed. And I swear to you, my whole body went cold, because the timing felt like a nail being tapped into place. The next day, Mom came to our house because she couldn't stand being alone in hers. We sat in the living room and tried to do that thing people do after a death, reaching for the good memories like they're life rafts, laughing at stories, then going quiet, then laughing again. Our house sits a little lower than the sidewalk outside, so if someone's walking past, they can see straight into the front room unless we keep the blind drawn. And we do, always. Sometimes the postman cuts across the little front garden, and you'll see his silhouette slide across the blind before he knocks. So when I saw a shadow cross the blind that afternoon, My brain automatically filed it as someone coming to the door. Except, it wasn't shaped like the postman. It was Liam. Same height, same broad shoulders, same familiar stance. And he used to keep his hair shaved down, almost always. The silhouette had that exact rounded head shape, like someone had taken a pair of scissors and cut him out of memory. The shadow moved toward the door, the way a person does when they're about to knock. I was on my feet instantly, 2 seconds, maybe less, pulled the door open, stepped out. No one. Nothing. Empty street. No footsteps fading away. Just that awful quiet again. One night, our smart speaker, totally unprompted, blurts out a phrase along the lines of, "Big brother's still keeping an eye on you." Now, Liam was technically younger than me, but he was taller, and he loved acting like the older one. Always teasing, always hovering, always pretending he was in charge. Hearing that phrase out loud in the house, out of nowhere, made my stomach drop. Another time, my son went to use the bathroom and yelled for me because the light switch wasn't where it should be. Someone had placed the little pull switch up on top of the bathroom door, so it hung down at this weird angle, like a prank you'd do just to spook someone for a laugh. And Liam was exactly that kind of idiot, in the most affectionate way possible. He'd do something just to get a reaction, then grin like he'd won a prize. But the one that really got Mum was this. She was on her mobile, pacing around the room, talking to someone, and she wandered near a corner where Liam's old work-from-home gear had been stored for a bit, an office handset and docking setup from his job. Out of nowhere, that office phone rang. Mum froze, walked up to it, looked at the display, and it stopped. She stepped away, still on her mobile, and a moment later, it rang again. Here's the thing. Those handsets don't just ring on their own. They have to be logged in and active on the system. And because I work in a similar environment, I checked. I verified it. His login had been removed, his profile cleared. There was no active account for that device to ring through. And yet it rang. Twice. Like it was waiting until Mum wasn't looking straight at it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, hand on heart, that I've proven anything. I still don't like making bold claims. I still chase the boring explanations first, because most of the time, the boring explanation is the right one. But when I think back to that front door, how it opened, how it pushed again the moment I sat down, then Mum's call at midnight, and then a shadow that looked exactly like him crossing our blind the next day, I don't know. All I know is this. It felt like Liam was saying goodbye in the only way he knew how. Not with a speech, not with some grand, glowing sign. Just a nudge at the door. A familiar shape. A couple of little, "Hey, I'm still around," moments. And honestly, as painful as it is, there's a part of me that's grateful for that. Hey, I'm going to share this even though it makes me feel a little exposed, because honestly, I don't know what else to do with it. For the past 6 or 7 weeks, I've been traveling non-stop for work, hotel after hotel, different cities, different beds. And during that time, there have been a few nights that left me in a way I can't fully put into words. It's like something keeps reaching into my sleep. The first really intense moment happened about 2 weeks ago when I was staying at a hotel in Woburn, Massachusetts. I don't even remember every detail clearly, but I remember the feeling. You know how you can wake up and instantly sense someone is right there? Like when you open your eyes and one of your kids is standing beside the bed, just watching you. That exact kind of presence. Only this time, I was completely convinced someone had gotten into my room. I jolted up and actually swung, like I lunged toward the edge of the bed, fists moving before my brain even caught up. I was ready to fight someone. And then, nothing. No footsteps, no shadow, no person. Just empty space and my own breathing getting louder and louder in the silence. A couple of days later, I had to switch rooms for a totally normal reason. Nothing creepy, nothing dramatic. But that second room was worse. I was asleep, and suddenly it felt like someone, or something, was pressing me down. Like I was pinned. I woke up struggling, and the second I became fully conscious, the pressure lifted. And what's strange is that I could feel myself rise afterward, almost like the mattress had been compressed and then slowly released. Like it had exhaled, if that makes any sense. That's when my mind started connecting dots. Because during Christmas week, I'd been in Las Vegas, staying near the Arts District, and I'd had the first version of this. I can't remember exactly what happened there either, just that same unmistakable awareness that I wasn't alone in the room, even though I absolutely was. At the time, I shrugged it off. Jet lag, stress, weird hotel vibes, whatever. But now it felt like part of the same thread. And then I traveled again, this time to Columbus, Ohio. The second night there, I had a dream that still makes my chest tighten when I think about it. The details are blurry, like dreams usually are, but I remember being aware inside it. And there was a figure. Somehow I felt like it was a woman, though I can't tell you why. She floated toward me, slow and deliberate, like she had all the time in the world. And then she put both hands around my throat and started choking me. I snapped awake, gasping, like my body had to remind itself how to breathe. Last night was more of the same. I can't even tell you what happened exactly, just that I felt that presence again, that wrongness. And I woke up with my heart hammering like I'd just run a sprint in the dark. And I'm sitting here trying to be rational, trying to explain it, trying to tell myself I'm overreacting. But I don't feel like I'm making it up. I feel like something is happening to me, and I don't know what to call it. I'm Jewish, and I've never been the type to run to clergy for things. But I'll be honest, I've even caught myself thinking, should I go talk to a priest? Should I ask someone to pray over me or something? That's how unsettled I am. That's how much I want someone to tell me there's a way to make it stop. I keep calling it a spirit, but I don't even know if that's the right word. Is it something trying to hurt me? Why does it only happen when I'm away from home? Why does it always happen when I'm half asleep, like it's waiting for me to be vulnerable? I'm not posting this to be dramatic. I'm posting it because I'm scared, and I don't know what to do next. So, last night I went to sleep like normal, and I ended up having one of those dreams that doesn't just fade when you wake up. It kind of sticks to you. Before I even get into it, just so you've got the full picture, I'm 39, I don't take any medications, I don't use drugs, I don't have any medical diagnoses that I know of, and I don't have a history of sleepwalking or seeing things that aren't there. That's part of why this shook me as much as it did. Okay, the first dream. In the dream, I wake up, except it doesn't feel like waking up in a normal sense. It's like my mind comes online, but I'm already somewhere else. I'm in this room that's just white. Not like white walls, more like the air itself is white, bright and washed out and endless. It's so intense I can't make out a single edge or corner. No windows, no lights, no shadows, nothing to anchor myself. Just brightness everywhere, like being inside a glowing fog. And I realize pretty fast that I can't move. Not my arms, not my legs, not even my hands. The only thing I can do is turn my head a tiny bit, just a few degrees, like my neck is stiff or pinned. I'm lying flat on something that feels brutally cold, like stone that's been sitting in a freezer, or steel. My skin feels goosebumped, like my body is trying to shrink away from the surface. Then it hits me. I'm restrained. My wrists and ankles are held down, spread out, like I'm positioned on purpose. And I remember this wave of fear rolling through me. Not even fear of a specific thing, just pure alarm. Like my body knows I'm in danger, but my brain can't find the reason. And there are sounds. Not loud, more like they're coming through a wall or through thick fabric. Muffled voices, whispers, multiple people maybe, but I can't understand a single word. It's just that low, secretive murmur. And underneath that, there's this clicking. At first, it's one click, like a pen being tapped. Then it speeds up, then slows down. Then it sounds like there are two of them, overlapping, out of sync. Like someone's fidgeting, or counting, or testing something. It isn't steady, which somehow makes it worse. If it had a rhythm, my brain could have tried to make sense of it. But it's chaotic, human, impatient. The strangest part is, I never actually see anyone. No faces, no silhouettes, nothing. Just the feeling that I'm not alone, and the certainty that something is happening to me, even if I can't watch it. I don't remember yelling. I don't remember fighting. It's like my fear is trapped inside my chest with nowhere to go. And then, this is the part that's hard to explain. I don't wake up from it. It just lets go. Like a door shuts and another one opens. Because after that, I have a second dream, and it's completely different. Normal. Almost boring compared to the first one. I'm sitting in this cozy kitchen with a woman named Marina. Not a close friend, but not a stranger either. Like someone I've met through other people. The kitchen feels lived in. Warm light, a faint smell of tea or soap, that kind of thing. There are other people in the house. Her family maybe, moving around in the background. The sound of a TV somewhere, footsteps, muffled conversation. I'm at her table, and we're talking like it's some kind of informal interview. She's asking me questions, I'm answering, and I have this calm feeling like, okay, I'm doing well. This is going fine. I even remember thinking, I'm saying the right things. Eventually, it ends. We stand up, I gather myself, and I leave. She walks me to the door, and right before it closes, she gives me this polite, final look, like, thanks for coming. And that's when I wake up, actually wake up, in my own bedroom. But here's where it gets unsettling. I wake up in bed, completely naked. And I don't sleep naked. I went to bed wearing a pajama top and underwear. I'm sure of it. It's muscle memory. It's routine. But when I sit up and look around, my clothes are gone. Not kicked off, not tangled in the blankets, just gone. I pull the covers back. Nothing. I check the floor. Nothing. I look around like an idiot, thinking maybe I tossed them somewhere half asleep. Still nothing. Like they vanished. And then I check my watch, because it tracks sleep, and I needed something solid, something objective to grab onto. It shows a pretty normal sleep pattern overall. Mostly core sleep, a couple long REM stretches. But there are a few short spikes where it says I was awake for about a minute at a time. And one part stands out. Around the early morning hours, my heart rate jumps. My normal resting rate sits around the high 60s or low 70s, and during that window, it shoots up into the 130s before settling back down. So now I'm sitting there in my bed, trying to piece it together. A dream where I'm pinned down in blinding white light, hearing whispers and clicking. A second dream that feels like someone calmly evaluating me. Waking up naked with my clothes missing. And a sudden heart rate spike in the middle of the night like my body panicked, even if my mind didn't fully remember why. And I'm not saying anything supernatural happened. I'm not even claiming it means anything. But I am saying I've never had a night like that before. And it left me with this lingering feeling, like I didn't just have a nightmare. Like something about that night was off. And I've been unsettled ever since. So, when I was a kid, the ocean was basically my second home. I was one of those kids who could spend hours in the water, snorkel on, eyes wide, just drifting over reefs and pretending I was some kind of explorer. Honestly, I never really grew out of that. Every summer, my family would do this little escape ritual. We'd pile onto our boat and hop between small islands off the coast, trying to stretch that sun-soaked freedom for as long as possible before we had to go back to city life. Traffic, routines, the same streets, the same everything. And then there was this one trip, maybe 7-ish years ago now, one that still shows up at every family dinner like it's a legend we're obligated to retell. My aunt had come along, and so had a couple cousins. One of them, Leo, was my age and always up for anything even mildly adventurous. And my mom has this obsession with finding places that feel untouched. Like she gets genuinely excited about little blank corners on a map. She'll zoom in on some curved inlet and swear she's discovered a secret. That day, she was convinced she'd found the one. Some small, hidden gulf tucked between rocky edges in the Mediterranean. No docks, no beach clubs, nothing. She talked the skipper into trying it, and after a long ride, something like an hour and a bit, we finally arrived. And I swear to you, it was unreal. The water was so clear it felt fake, like someone had poured glass into the sea. You could see the bottom perfectly, ripples in the sand, dark patches of seaweed swaying like hair, rocks layered with tiny colonies of life. Fish everywhere, little silver flashes and bigger ones cruising slowly like they owned the place. But the best part? No people. Not a single other boat. It felt like we'd stumbled into some private aquarium that the world had forgotten. Of course, by the time we got in, the light was starting to dip. You know that moment when the sun is still out but the shadows stretch longer and the water starts looking deeper than it should? The adults told us not to stay in too long. Visibility was getting worse, and they didn't want anyone smashing a knee on a rock or swimming too far without realizing it. But I had my snorkel gear, and this small, waterproof flashlight I was weirdly proud of, like it made me a professional or something. I was buzzing. I didn't want to just swim in this place. I wanted to see it. So I convinced Leo to come with me, and we started doing these slow dives, ducking under the surface and gliding along the bottom like we belonged there. It was one of those moments where you're so focused on what you're seeing that you forget time is passing. I remember spotting these bursts of color, corals in reds and purples, tiny snails stuck to stone, shells half buried in sand like treasure. Schools of fish moved in these synchronized waves, and every time I turned my head, something new came into view. After a while, I came up for air, took a breath, and then dipped my face back down. And that's when I saw it. At first, it was just a shape, something pale and round sitting on the seabed. It blended in with the sand, and it had a thin layer of algae on it like it had been there a long time. My brain didn't know what it was yet, but something in me immediately went still. I pointed my flashlight at it and swam down, slow and careful, like I didn't want to startle the ocean itself. And then it clicked. A skull. A human skull. And I felt this sharp drop inside my stomach, like the world had suddenly gotten colder. I shot back up toward the surface, trying to keep myself lined up so I wouldn't lose the spot, and I started waving at Leo like a maniac. When he came up, I blurted it out, half whisper, half panic. I saw something, I swear. It looked like a skull. And Leo, of course, reacted like Leo. His eyes lit up like Christmas. He didn't look scared, he looked thrilled. He took a breath and went straight down. I stayed up top, barely blinking, watching his silhouette move over the bottom. He searched for a bit, long enough that my heart started kicking harder, and then he came back up, sputtering seawater and shaking his head. "I don't see anything," he yelled. And I was like, No, 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 there is no way I imagined that. So we tried again, and again. For what felt like forever, probably closer to 40 minutes, we combed that area. We dove along the rocks, checked behind corals, traced the sand in widening circles like detectives at the bottom of the sea. Nothing. Not even a hint of it. It was like the ocean had swallowed the evidence the second I looked away. By the time we finally gave up, the light was even lower, the water darker, and the adults were calling us back to the boat. We climbed aboard, dripping and breathless, and I couldn't stop looking back at the water like it might suddenly reveal it again, just to prove I wasn't crazy. We left that gulf not long after. And here's the strangest part. Over time, we lost track of exactly where it was. My mom remembers the general trip, the feeling of the place, but not the exact location. And honestly, neither do I. It's like that gulf exists only in the story now. But I'll never forget that moment. That pale circle in the sand, the flashlight beam, and the awful, unmistakable realization of what was staring back at me. To this day, it's still the story that comes up whenever we're all at the table. Someone will grin and go, "Tell them about the disappearing skull." And everyone leans in like it's their first time hearing it. And every single time, I still get that same little chill, because I know what I saw. I just don't know where it went. Okay, so I've always been that kid. The one who grew up obsessed with ghost stories, demons, haunted houses, anything creepy. I didn't just like scary stuff. I collected it in my brain like it was a hobby. When I was about 14, I went over to my friend Mara's house. We were sitting on her bedroom floor, and she pulls out 2 pencils like she's about to do a science experiment. She's like, "Let's play Charlie Charlie." If you've never heard of it, it's this game where you balance one pencil over another in a little cross, write yes and no on paper, and supposedly you're talking to a spirit named Charlie. You ask a question, and the pencil points to yes or no. And listen, at first I was rolling my eyes so hard I swear I saw my own brain. I was like, this is so fake. This is air movement. This is someone breathing too hard. This is gravity. I did not believe it. But then, one of our friends took a picture of us while we were doing it. Later, when she looked at the photo, there was this weird reddish ring, like a circle, around me and Mara. And I know how that sounds. I know. But it didn't look like a normal camera glitch. It looked like something had basically highlighted us. And that was the first time I felt that little shift in my stomach, like, okay, maybe I don't know everything. Now jump ahead. When I was 16, I ended up in St. Adelaide's. It was a mental health facility. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was in a really dark place back then. I'd tried to hurt myself more than once, and school basically said I needed more help than they could give. There was this setup where we still had school inside the facility. Like you'd show up in the morning, eat breakfast, do therapy, and then later there was rec time. Rec time was in this gym, and the gym had this stage attached to it, like an old, half-forgotten stage that looked like nobody had touched it in years. Behind the stage was a mess, cardboard, dusty junk, and somehow glass bottles. Which, looking back, I have no idea why that was even allowed back there. The supervision wasn't great, and the older kids knew it. So one day a few of us, me, Jade, and Kelsey, we got this genius idea. We broke a bottle, used a smooth piece of glass like a planchette, and drew our own Ouija board on cardboard. I remember thinking, this is so stupid, but also kind of exciting. Like a scary movie where you already know what not to do, but you do it anyway. We started asking questions, and I swear to you, the glass moved. At first, I told myself it had to be one of the girls pushing it, because that's what people do. That's the explanation that makes sense. But then we asked who we were talking to, and it spelled out a name. Eli. We kept going, kind of half laughing, half nervous. And then it got personal. Because Eli gave me my dad's middle name, then my brother's middle name, then my middle name. And I froze, like full body cold. Because those weren't names I went around saying, especially not my dad's and brother's middle names. Those weren't things my friends knew, and definitely not kids inside a facility I'd only been around for a short time. Even saying it out loud now makes my chest tight because it felt so sad. Not like a horror movie, more like a lost kid. Then one day, it changed, like the energy shifted. We asked if it was still Eli, and the board answered with something else. It gave a word, something that sounded old and sharp, like it didn't belong in a gym behind a stage. One of the girls later said it looked like a Latin word. We looked it up, and I remember my stomach dropping because the meaning was bad. I can't even tell you exactly what it was now. I just remember thinking, oh, this is not the same thing. So we tried to get rid of the board. We couldn't burn it. No lighters, no matches, and we were searched all the time. So we ripped the cardboard into pieces and buried it outside near the fence line, like that was somehow going to undo what we'd started. And then, months later, I got discharged and tried to go back to normal school. That didn't go well. I spiraled again, got admitted again, this time inpatient, and when I finally came home, that's when the weird stuff started happening. My parents' house had this heavy living room door, not one of those doors that swings easily. This thing would drag on the carpet. If you wanted it shut, you had to really lean into it. One day I walked through and it slammed behind me, hard, like somebody had thrown it shut. I told myself it was a draft, or the carpet, or whatever. A few days later, my dad casually mentions, like he's talking about the weather, how the bathroom window slammed shut while he was in the bath. And he was confused because the window had that mechanism that holds it open, and it stuck sometimes because of old paint. It wasn't the kind of window that just slams on its own. My mom got really quiet after that, and then she looked right at me and said, "What have you been messing with?" That's the thing about moms. They don't always know the details, but they know when the air in the house feels wrong. So I told her. I told her about St. Adelaide's. I told her about the cardboard board. I told her about Charlie with Mara. I told her everything. My mom didn't yell. She just got this determined look and immediately called my grandma. That same day, my grandmother showed up with holy water. She walked through the house blessing doorways, corners, windows, the hallway, all of it. And my room? My room got the deluxe package, like she was not taking chances. And after that, no joke, everything stopped. No more slamming doors, no more windows snapping shut, no more heavy, weird, watchful feeling in the house. And I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm really not. I can only tell you what it felt like, what happened, and how the moment we treated it like it was real, it finally left us alone. But I'll tell you this, I never played with anything like that again. Not even as a joke, not even just for fun. Because some games don't feel like games once you've played them.